are fueled by passion.
This is what a championship is all about. Absolute class.
This to go into the lead, and King Edward's done it again.
Our love will never fade.
There she is, the girl of the moment, Julia Kessler-Djokovic.
We are a team forged by diversity.
What a time to add 3% onto your personal best.
We share a bond unspoken. And we raise each other up.
Just the last. The championship in his hands. Plenty of time on the clock. Germany take the title.
We are stronger together. We are united by equestrian.
Absolutely top class.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. Good to see all of you. And we have a full house today, so that's great. This is the 13th Sports Forum since we started back in 2012. Let's not forget it was an initiative of my predecessor, Her Royal Highness Princess Haya. And I think this is one of our strongest legacies, together, of course, with the building. We have over 230 delegates this year, which is not a record, because that was back in 2019, but we are not far away from it. And it means, basically, I think that this sports forum is really something that is necessary for our community, for our governance, because we have a very complex decision-making system, where we do a lot of consultation, and one of the most important phases in this consultation is, of course, the sports forum. And every time, I think we will not have enough topics, but also this year we had to make really a selection on the topics that we wanted to present to you. So, great to have you all here, but let's also not forget a little bit our sport, if this thing works. Yes? The future of the Nations Cup jumping has been on my agenda since I came to the FEI back in 2011 as a Secretary General, and we have gone through a lot of phases. First, we introduced a final in Barcelona, but then still we needed to continue working on it, and I'm so happy that finally, I think, after 12 years, finally we landed with a great League of Nations, Longines League of Nations, and let's not forget Longines, because they made it possible. And I want really to thank the athletes, the jumping committee, the organizers, Longines, especially Urs Schiendorfer, to make this happen. It was very tough, but we got there. And if we saw the result, and we had the first leg back in Abu Dhabi, then I must say I was very stressed when I went to Abu Dhabi, and I was very relieved when I left Abu Dhabi. Then we went to Ocala, and even there it was still again the same atmosphere, the same drive, the same happiness, and I must say it really felt very good that no rider, no groom, no national federation, no commentator, nobody said anything negative about this revamped Longines League of Nations. And I must say, it made me very proud, and I think we are on the right way now. As I said, we went to Ocala. I call it Disneyland for horses. It's an incredible venue, and I must really thank the organizers of, as well, Abu Dhabi, and Sultan is here. Hi, Sultan. Thank you very much for all that you did, and send my best regards to the general, but also the people from Ocala. Well done, great, and a big welcome for all the athletes and their grooms and their entourage. And now we come to Europe. So I hope, and I told yesterday already to Nela, I don't see her here, but hi Nela, St. Gallen, and then people from Rotterdam, good luck. We expect the same and even more. So just to put a little bit of pressure. Huh? But let's not forget, now we went to Riyadh. First time that we go to the Middle East for a final of the FEI World Cup dressage and the Longines FEI World Cup jumping. And there also, again, I mean, I went there 4 years ago to look at the venue, and well, you needed a lot of imagination to see this. But what they have done there with the National Federation under the guidance of His Highness Prince Abdullah and with Royal Highness Princess Delaelle, they did a fantastic and a great job. And what sport did we have? I'm very proud of my first name, which is Ingmar, and it's a Swedish name, especially when we saw that Sweden won as well the dressage, as well as the jumping, with Patrick Kittel, and then, of course, Henrik von Eckermann with the incredible, the King, it's more an emperor, I think, King Edward, second time in a row winning the Longines World Cup jumping. But let's also look at the future, because this year, undoubtedly, the most important event will be Paris, Olympics and Paralympic Games. And we will have here the team from GL events with Sylvie Robert and Jean Morel, who will have meetings with the national federations, especially the technicians of the national federations, to talk about the logistics for Paris. But look at what great venue. I mean, I'm very proud, and I also say to my colleague IOC members, the Versailles venue will be the best. It's even not a discussion. It's like that. And if you look at these pictures, I can tell you, of course, running up to the games, there are always a lot of stories that are told. Bad news, gossip. But and like, oh, the stands, there was a problem with the stands. Well, I can tell you since yesterday evening, the stands are finished and they have been approved and they are safe and they are secure. So the Olympics is, of course, a big challenge for us because they need to be successful. We have the best venue, we have the best infrastructure, but we also need to perform because the IOC, as you know, is judging international federations, sports, events based upon their performance, not on the field of play, also a little bit, of course, luckily, hopefully, but also on what we do on broadcasting, what we do on digital performance, because in the end, the money of the IOC comes from television sales rights. So the better we perform, the more chance we have to stay in the Olympic program. So for that, we really need your help. We are working with our team on a digital campaign to promote the equestrian in the Olympic Games with this time a focus on a good life for horses, which is linked into a session that we will have this morning. But this is really important, and we will reach out to each one of you and in several languages to support us, to promote equestrian sport in the Olympic Games and to drive traffic to television channels that broadcast equestrian sport, but also to digital channels and digital platforms and social media and God knows what. I'm not a specialist in it, but we will reach out to you and we will need your support because we need to work together to make it the best performance ever. But now let's take a look at the program of the Sports Forum. This morning we will have the action plan further to the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing group. We'll have a session in the afternoon on sustainability, introducing the IOC approach and the IOC priorities. We will have a session on the equine anti-doping and controlled medication regulations, because that are rules that have a full review, and in the framework of our decision-making process, we are submitting you what we propose to change in the rules later this year at our General Assembly. And as a little cream on the cake, we will have the signing this evening of the Groom's Charter. Oops. Tomorrow we will talk about the championships, and we dedicated an important session to that because we are a little bit in trouble. It becomes very difficult to find organizers for championships, and I tell you already here now, we still are discussing and looking for organizer for the European Championships in jumping, in eventing, and in paradressage for 2025, next year. We have some leads, but it becomes more and more difficult. And we want to discuss with you to talk about the reasons why it is so difficult to find organizers. Is it because we are asking too much? Is it because our requirements are too high? Is it because our hosting fees are too high? Or is it maybe because it becomes so complex to organize a championship because you don't know how many athletes you will have at your championship, so it's very difficult to make a budget planning? Or is it just because there are too many events in our calendar? And maybe in a year, for the seniors in the Olympic and Paralympic disciplines, in a year where the European Championships are not qualifying for the Olympic Games, there is maybe less interest. In any case, we want to have an open discussion about it and to look what will we do for the future. And maybe we need at a certain stage say, listen, you know what? We have each 4 years we have a World Championship, we have each 4 years we have Olympic Games, and maybe each 4 years we have European Championships for the senior Olympic and Paralympic discipline, so that the calendar is a bit more or less stressful. We will talk about safeguarding, which is a very important topic, and the IOC invested a lot of money in this topic. And it's important that not only the FEI, but also you, national federations, know how to address this, have the mechanisms in place, and not always have to kick the can to the FEI because your own rule system does not allow you to undertake action. So we will help you with that and make suggestions. We will talk about gender equality, and although our figures improved dramatically, I would say, we are good. We also want you to be good, because in many cases we depend on national federations when they send candidates for FEI commissions, for FEI board positions. So if we want to have more gender equality, we need also your support to do that, and it's a kind of a mindset. But we improved already a lot. Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission. Just allow me to say a couple of words on this, because let's be honest, it's probably the most critical and actual topic of this sports forum. Let me remind you that we already started this process in February 2022. We created the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, set their terms of reference, and I would really thank them, this committee under the leadership of Professor Nathalie Waran, for the work they have done. We have had at that time the courage to invite people that were critical to the FEI, that were critical to what we did. And we invited them and said, okay, look at it and help us and tell us what we need to do. And I think they did a great job in providing a report to our board and to tell us in what direction we have to go. And in the meantime, we have seen a lot of initiatives developed in national federations, in continental associations. We have here also Rolly Owers of World Horse Welfare, who did a fantastic seminar. I mean, it really buzzed this whole social license to operate equine ethics, well-being, horse welfare. And I just came back from Fontainebleau on Saturday, where we had meeting with the critical people, and where we had meetings with journalists, and where we tried together with a team that we built for Paris, with a veterinarian, with a coordinator of equine welfare, Dr. Cordet, where we had a dialogue with the media to explain them what we are doing, to build this confidence, because that is necessary, because there is a lot of lack of knowledge with the people. So we need to explain much better what we are doing, why we do it, and it's also a dynamic process. So I really look forward to the session that will tackle this point, and that will help us to create now the action plan that we need. Let's not forget where we come from. The Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission presented their final report, and that's where their work stopped, when they handed over their final report to the board of the FEI. And then the board of the FEI gave this plan to FEI headquarters under the leading of our Secretary General to work on an action plan for implementation. And this is what we are going to present today. And this is a dialogue. They are not going to do this ex cathedra. They are here to listen to you, and please feed in on how we can make it better. Because we can only make this happen if we work together. I really need your participation. We really need your participation so that we can finalize a plan, approve this plan by the board later this year, and then present it to you, not for approval, but to present it to you in the General Assembly sessions, so that we can work together on the implementation of it. And there will be quick wins, but there will also be things that take more time, for which we will have to undertake scientific research, etc. We can only be successful if we work together. All of you need to be on board. Nobody can kick the can to somebody else. And I really insist, stop sending me letters and emails sharing your concerns. I mean, I think we've proven already back in 2022, when we created this Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, that we are concerned, that we know that, hey, Houston, we have a problem, and that we need to solve it. So don't write to us, but look at what you can do yourself. I'm not going to repeat the famous words of John F. Kennedy, but we should look each one at what we can do to make this happen and to make it better. So it's a shared responsibility, and it's time for action, and the action is at every level. A year ago, some top athletes told me, yeah, but you know, the problem is in the lower level. Well, with all the cases that we had recently, it shows very clearly it's not only on the lower level. And when it's on the higher level, these are the cases that catch the attention of the media. And we are as strong as the weakest link. And it takes years to build up a reputation, and it takes just a minute to destroy it. And this is a bit the situation where we're in now. And that's why we need all our support, all your support. It's a common responsibility. But the Sports Forum is also something else. I mean, you are all here together. Happy to see so many happy faces and friends here. It's also a place to network, to share views, to gossip a little bit probably also, to renew friendships. And we will have our lunches outside here, because then we don't lose too much time during the day going back and forth to the sessions. But then, of course, we will have tonight our dinner in the Beau Rivage. In the Beau Rivage, I think that's where we had our first Sports Forum dinner back in 2012. So that catches up with the good tradition. And then, of course, tomorrow we will have our famous cocktail dînatoire, as they call it in Switzerland, in the FEI headquarters, and you are all more than welcome. So I hope that you will enjoy this sports forum and that we have a good combination and balance between work and some free time and enjoying the hospitality of Switzerland. Another tradition is also to introduce the speaker from IMD. And Mr. President, thank you again for allowing us to use this fantastic infrastructure. We are very happy and privileged to be here. And this year we have the pleasure to introduce to you Professor Cyril Bouquet. By the way, I just learned they are both Canadians, so Mark Samuels has probably something to do with it or not. But Professor Bouquet, who is a Professor Strategy and Innovation, and he specializes in helping organizations and executives to tackle complex challenges. If there is one thing we try to do here is probably to tackle complex challenges, and to do that through innovation and creativity. In 2021, he published a book called Alien Thinking: How to Bring Your Breakthrough Ideas to life. Yeah. And this is probably what we have to do in the next 2 days. So thank you very much, and Professor Bouquet, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Indeed, very good welcome here on our beautiful campus at IMD. I'm really pleased to have a few minutes with you this morning after the introduction from Mr. President to again wish you a fantastic day of discussions. We saw the program. It's an important list of topics that you will have the opportunity to discuss. And indeed, you know, we are delighted to welcome you here at IMD. IMD was created by business for business. So every year we have the opportunity to work with fantastic executives coming from a number of different industries around the world. And they come here because they want to reflect on how the world is changing around them, think about how they can address core challenges that exist in their business, and think about the ways that they can individually or with their teams or with the whole organization actually create impact for the business, but also for the world at large. And so here, I just have a few minutes to spend with you, and of course I have a few remarks, but also want to use, and that's why you have this little envelope, and I can see that nobody has opened it yet, which is great, because in a few minutes you'll have a quick exercise that we'll be able to debrief together. But this was about 15 months ago, not the last one, but the one before that, at the World Economic Forum in Davos. They got all of the world leaders to come together, and this was the motto for the year, for the summit, right? The polycrisis. And indeed, at the time, the world had to deal with the aftermath of the COVID crisis. There was the war in Ukraine. There was a high inflation. And clearly, this was a time where people had to stop and think about what it is that they were doing, and maybe there's a better way of imagining the future that we can create. And so indeed, at IMD also, organizations were coming, and I understood, right, from your world that right now, right, I mean, I don't know if it's a polycrisis, but it is a time that requires a certain degree of thinking, right, about what is it that we can do, and maybe a certain degree of change. Of course, when I see those newspapers, my first reaction is to say how unfair. Right? I mean, I have two kids, 11 and 15, and indeed, like many other kids, they had the chance, right, when they were, in fact, a little bit younger, to go on these horse riding camps. And one thing that struck me is that I was amazed how 3/4 of every day was spent on the well-being of animals, trying to understand how do we take care of animals before we start to ride on them. And of course, in the process, they learn incredible things about respect, about empathy, about caring, right? Not just for animals, but for each other and human beings. And so, and this is what happens. Whenever you're very visible as an organization, right, you also become a little bit of a target, right? For other people to look at you and say, we found something. And of course, here what is challenging is that it's the core. It's the core of what we do. But just to make you feel also a little bit better that indeed you're not the only organization who has to deal with those kinds of pressures, many years ago, I started to work with Nestlé. Nestlé is a fantastic organization. I have a lot of respect for everything that they do. And of course, when I started to work with Nestlé, it's because they were under attack, literally, right? Those were activists, and it was Greenpeace sitting in front of their building saying, you know, you are among, together with Coca-Cola, one of the world's biggest polluters of plastic. And of course, it was also unfair. I mean, at the time, in fact, José Lopez, who was an executive in residence at IMD until very recently, until unfortunately he passed away, at the time he also invited the NGOs. He took them all around the world to actually invite them into those discussions. Look at what we are doing, right? We are trying to make the world a better place as well. And indeed, at the time, I started to work with Nestlé executives around innovation. How can we eliminate packaging altogether? How can we find new materials that will make packaging biodegradable? How can we reuse and recycle plastic in a much better way? And they've never stopped to rethink what they do and actually find better ways of creating a positive difference for the world around them. And indeed, those positive differences are only possible if, as an organization, right, you're able to mobilize the talent that exists within your ranks. Right? And of course, we can do that within an organization. We can do that within the whole industry, right? To think about what could change. And if there's a polycrisis, there's also a time for innovation. And indeed, you know, when I look at, just very quickly, I sort of looked at what was happening in this industry, and I see a lot of positive developments that show that indeed we are going in the right direction. And today, in fact, for most organizations that come to IMD to think about innovation, sustainability has become a core driver, right? It is helping organizations to rethink what they do, how they do it better. And so this is going to continue to remain an important angle for the industry moving forward. Technology is another level that exists, and I can see, again, that technology can be used the same way that we put sensors in athletes' shoes to try to understand how they train, how they move around a basketball pitch, and maybe we can use those data to reduce the risk of injury, while we could do the same thing for horses, right? So technology can be, again, a positive force of change for good, and we see a lot of interesting initiatives in the industry today. And also another lever that is often motivating innovation inside organization is how do we engage our customers, how do we engage fans, in particular, in new ways. And I see, again, a lot of positive initiatives that are taking place. So, yes, the world needs creativity, needs innovation, your industry as well, but there's a lot that you can do using some of those levels, but the most important lever is in this room, right? Is the talent that exists here, that also exists back in your own countries, in your own organizations, where there's a lot of people with good ideas that can actually create progress for this whole industry moving forward. And to demonstrate this is when we can do finally this little exercise. So you've received an envelope, and there's been a number of envelopes that have been spread around, right? So this is an exercise that you should do. The person next to the envelope should grab it, exactly. And this is an exercise that you can do in pairs, or 3 people at once. But there's about 100 envelopes that are spread around the room. And it's going to be a very quick exercise that will demonstrate that you have everything it takes to create incredible innovations for the future, okay? So you have a little pack of Lego. I don't know when is the last time that you created an interesting piece of art using Lego. But you have 30 seconds. So again, in pairs or with a couple of people around you, you have 30 seconds to create a duck. Now, if you want to change a brief and create a horse, you can also do that, right? But you have 30 seconds. It's going to be very quick. This is your mission, okay? 30 seconds to create a duck. Done, you can bring it here on this little high table. right, so I think we have enough ducks, you know, but, you know, we bring whatever ducks we have, we can put them on the little table. Very good. Todd and Victoria, I will ask you to stay with me so that we can all debrief the exercise together. But you can see the beautiful creations. So thank you, thank you. Oh, they are amazing. Look at that. All right, a caterpillar. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. So, of course, you can pick them up at the end of the exercise. Look at that. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if I've had so many ducks at once on the table, but this is fantastic. Great. Thank you. So we are going to take 5 minutes just to debrief this exercise, and then we'll close. Look at that. All right, so I've asked Victoria and Todd to stay with me so we can look at those ducks together. So first, if there was any doubt at all, that there's a lot of creativity and innovation potential in this group alone, well, then this is solved, right? I mean, look at this one. There was like the caterpillar duck. There's this one. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I've never seen it before, right? And so there's definitely, and if there's one thing that we know at IMD, right, is that when you think about what it takes to create creativity and innovation, everything is learned. Everything is learned. So we'll see how can we learn it, but the whole theory of innovation is included in this exercise. So here, in fact, I've asked Todd and Victoria to stay so that we can debrief it together. So when you look at this, right, is there one observation that you have, right? Beyond the fact that they're all super creative, innovative, and beautiful. I mean, some of them are really really cute, right? But you know, is there an observation that you have when you sort of look at them?
They've all used the eye element at the top.
Okay, yeah, so that's, you know, and they're the brief, right? Like to build a duck or a horse, right? So, you know, we put kind of the eye element at the top, maybe. That's consistent with the brief of, you know, this one, the other. All right, cool. And another observation that you have. Of course, we have a lot of ducks here.
We have some flying ducks, and we have
some flying ducks. And
a
pair of ducks, yes, a paraduck. Yeah, very cool, very good, yeah, great. Okay, flying ducks and yeah, what else?
A lot of beaks.
A lot of beaks, yeah. Yeah, very cool. Okay, yeah. So there's one more thing, you know, that I don't know if you can see it on the picture, right? Behind us. They're all different, right? Even though you're very far, you can sort of see that. And it's kind of amazing when you think that all of you kind of had exactly the same bricks, right? You had exactly 6 pieces of Lego to play with, and I gave you a brief. Create a duck or a horse, you know, if you prefer. But you kind of all created different ducks, which is kind of amazing. I mean, now you can try to see, are there some that are similar? Right? I mean, we can try to sort of group them. You know, those are not exactly similar, right? Are they, I mean, it's possible to find some, but you see the tail is different. I mean, you know, I think we can agree they are cousins, but they are not, they are not exactly twin brothers, right? I mean, they are similar inspirations, but they are actually different. So here, I mean, maybe you have, I mean, of course, we can find some that are identical, but it doesn't happen so often, right? So again, you know, are they the same? No, see the flying wings are a little bit of a different position. And so this is telling us something very, very important about innovation. Right? When I said everything is learned, and now because they are very perfect, you know, you want to find 2 that are the same, and it's possible, but we haven't so far. So maybe how many do you think we have? Maybe 50, 60 on the table, they're all different. So there's 3 things that I would like you to remember, and it's the whole theory of innovation that are very important. First, right, the first thing is that sometimes we believe that innovation or the act of creativity is a little bit mysterious, that there are some people who live in the future and others who live in the present. No, right? The future already, often when we see something that is innovative, and I'll ask you in a second to pick the one that you like the most, but you know, but it's simply a different combination of bricks that everybody had. Nobody lives in the future. Everybody lives in the present. The only thing we know from psychology researchers is that people who are creative, who are innovative, are very curious. They look around. They see interesting developments, maybe often in other industries or other countries, or if they look inside the organizations, they look across. And then they connect things in new and interesting ways. And that's what is actually innovative. So nobody lives in the future, but it's by connecting bricks. And that's why often when I I work on innovation programs. I take people cooking. You know, I give them a basket of ingredients and say, what can you create with what you have? So it's not about coming up with the fancy idea that nobody had before. It's about, you know, looking around and connecting things. And then this is the birth of innovation often. So that's kind of the first element. The second element, obviously, is that in 30 seconds, you had the time to do a lot of things, but there's a lot of things you couldn't do as well. What is it that you couldn't do in 30 seconds?
We struggled to open the packet.
Oh, so open the packet. But you succeeded. You succeeded, so that's good, you know. A very complex task that we give you at IMD, but you passed that one. What is one thing that you couldn't do in 30 seconds?
Make a plan or
Yeah.
try to work it out. You just have to start.
You just have to do it, right? Just do it, as Nike is saying. Now, of course, thinking in innovation, is that important? Should we think? Of course, yes, right? You need to think, you need to reflect. But often in organizations, we spend too much time thinking. And so here is almost an extreme case where I said 30 seconds so that I make sure that you cannot think too much. You cannot plan, you just have to do. And it's to remind you that at the end, the future, you cannot simply think through it. You cannot think about something that doesn't exist. You have to create it, right? You have to actually throw yourself into the future and see what happens. And this is how, you know, you find what the future actually looks like. So we call this innovation experimentation, right? And here I'm going to experiment with you. I'm going to say, okay, how do we know which of those ducks is the best one, right? Like pick please a duck that you think is kind of interesting and tell me why. This one, why that one?
This duck has a hat on.
It has a hat on, and that's kind of, you know, nice, you know, and you like it because it has a hat, and it's a fancy hat. I mean, it looks like classy. It's a classy, like almost like it looks like a horse rider, you know, like very elegant, you know, for a show. Victoria, which one would you pick that
I'm
there's
going
kind of...
more traditional. It has a foot, it has a beak, it has an eye, it has a tail.
Yeah, and it looks like sturdy, you know, kind of like solid, right? Yes, very good. And so you've picked a duck that you like. You know, I could also do the same. I could say this one is kind of interesting. And by the way, this one is a combination, right? So in 30 seconds, some people still had the find to collaborate, which is not obvious. It does not happen very often. But of course, logic of combination, if you partner with other people, then, you know, you have double the amount of resources, double the amount of connection, in fact more, right? The amount of connections that are possible, so you can create some very, very fancy ducks. And so that's what happens, right? This is how we found out. We cannot know in advance, right? I mean, which duck is it going to be the most successful? We don't know, but we can test. If I run this experiment many times, I will see which are the ducks that are being picked. And if I have good conversations, I can understand what are the attributes of a winning duck. I can also have a theory. You can say, you know what, like this one is my favorite duck, and, you know, it never gets picked, you know. Why is that? I can discuss with people. I say, look, like, don't you think that this is the speedy duck, right? It can go super fast and so on. Yeah, but the haircut is kind of like the way it looks like he's going to lose half of his head, you know. So maybe just a little trick, you know, and then it's the perfect duck. But I learned that through the logic of experimentation. So the first learning point, right, if you want to create innovation, it's not about thinking about the future. It's about experimenting with it and combining things in new and interesting ways. Now, of course, at some point in organizations, right, you have to pick. You cannot just go with all those possibilities. And so often there is a duck committee in organizations. Do you have a duck committee? In your, yes, a lot of duck committees, right? And so indeed, we have a duck committee because, you know, at some point we have to be efficient, right? With our use of resources, we cannot champion all of those initiatives, so we'll have to pick. So because it's about making sure that the resources go to the most promising ducks, if you will. But the problem is that because it's such an important decision that we put good people on the duck committee. Who is sitting on the duck committee? I'm sure many of you are sitting on the duck committee. All right, raise your hand if you're sitting on the committee and your task is to pick projects that will receive budgets and efforts and so on. Yes, so you're sitting there because but how, it's an important decision. So who do we put on the committee? Good people. How do we know they're good? Well, because they've showed they were good in the past, right? So that's a little bit the challenge, that often we trust, right, the judgment of people when it relates to decisions that involve the future, right? But we trust the judgment that they've had in the past. And so this is why that it's very important. Often innovators don't get it. They're like, oh, I have this great idea and it wasn't picked. They don't get it. Why they don't get it? Because the people on the committee, their first responsibility is to make sure that you don't screw up, right? That you can stay true to who you are, your DNA, your vision for the future and so on. And so what is absolutely essential is not just to master the art of experimentation, to think the art of combinations, but also to have good conversations with the committee, because the future is really a combination of tradition and evolution. It can never be a true, complete revolution, right? And so those good discussions are important. So you can, of course, recover your duck at the end of the exercise. But we just wanted to demonstrate not only the theory of innovation, but the sophistication of the work that you can do when you come to a place like IMD. Then you play great exercises with those ducks. So let's give a big round of applause to Victoria and Todd. Thank you so much. Very good. All right, so in fact, I asked ChatGPT also, can you please create a duck, using 6 Lego bricks, and this is what I get. Any observation when you look at this? More than six pieces. So then I ask again, can you please create a duck made of 6 and only 6 Lego bricks? And again, I get more than 6. So the one thing we learn is that ChatGPT doesn't know how to count. So this is not ChatGPT's DALL-E, but it's part of OpenAI. It's another similar generator of images. And so innovation at the end, we can use tools like ChatGPT and other AI tools, but it's really the combination of human talent, if you will, and those machines. We can never trust entirely the machines when it comes to imagining the future, and the human intuition remains and is important. And this is why, indeed, Mr. President mentioned this book. If you're interested to read about it, there's a number of articles that are put on our website, alienthinking.org. There is a QR code here where you can read a number of stories that we've written about people who are true alien thinkers in our view. And really, this is about the logic of how do you pay attention to the world around you. This is the A of alien. The L is the levitation. How do you create the space for innovation to happen? The I is the art of combination, is imagination, is the art of playing like kids. And the N is interesting, is the navigation part, is managing the committee. So hopefully you can learn a few things. And then I wanted to mention in closing that also all of those insights, if you will, we see the sports context as an ideal setting to understand what it takes to create innovative organizations for the future. So we have this program at IMD, created this program many years ago, Innovation in Action, together with the Olympic Committee, with UEFA. It is a program that is open to everyone. Of course, half of the people who come to this program to learn about innovation come from the world of sports, but the other half actually come from other organizations. Could be a bank, could be Nestle, it could be Intel, it could be Lego. Those are previous participants that we've had. And together with people from the world of sports, coming from all different sports sectors, including Olympic athletes that we have every year on this program, right? We think about, how can we create a better world for generations to come through innovation. So hopefully this is an opportunity for you also to send people to this program. At IMD, it's offered once a year. It's a fantastic forum, and I hope that maybe I could either meet you or some of your team members on this program on the next edition later in the fall. I wish you a very successful summit, and hope you have a great day of discussions. And thank you for joining us on our beautiful campus in Lausanne.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, and those of you online. First of all, thank you so much, Professor Cyril Bouquet, for that incredible presentation. I think there are a couple of takeaways on that one. I hope, if you don't mind, I'm going to repeat what they are, because I certainly learned something today. Is that really, I think one of the reasons that we're all here together today is really to create the future together. And that is something that we have demonstrated, you have demonstrated really well. And one of the other things is some of us are on duck committees. And I believe that I'm on one of those duck committees. But anyways, again, a big welcome to you all today. We are very excited to present to you this very important session, which I think this is probably the biggest reason that we have so many people here, which is we want to provide you with some action plans that we have come up with on the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission's recommendations. One of the things that I'd like to say, and I think our president has addressed this earlier already today, is that the FEI, as well as all the participants here, either in person or online, share really a collective understanding, I believe, and a commitment to ensuring that everyone involved in sport horses recognizes and upholds their responsibility for horse welfare. Over the years, we, the FEI, have implemented a number of processes and rules in order to ensure horses' welfare. However, as many of you are aware, and as was mentioned already previously by our president, in 2022, in response really to the growing concern over global challenges such as climate change, resource use, animal welfare, the FEI established this independent commission to address societal and equestrian community concerns related to the use of horses in sport, and the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission was born. This important commission, as we all know, was tasked with not only addressing societal concerns about the use of horses in sport, but also creating a blueprint to future-proof equestrian sports and provide independent advice and recommendations to ensure that the equine welfare was safeguarded through ethical, evidence-based policy and practices. I'm going to provide you a little bit of background again, but it's always good to know where we come from. Now, this commission was chaired by Professor Dr. Natalie Warren from New Zealand, who is an internationally respected behavior and welfare expert and professor of One Welfare, Executive Dean of the Eastern Institute of Technology in New Zealand, as I mentioned before. The commission included 5 external members, which they like to call themselves as FEI critical friends, and this is what we needed. We needed critical friends to show us and to demonstrate and to reach out to figure out what things really needed to be improved. The members were appointed because either they had expertise in equine welfare, equitation science, ethics, education, public affairs, and there were also 5 FEI representatives. And these FEI representatives were chosen for their considerable experience in the area of FEI responsibility, and also to provide, which was very important, National Federation's voice, athletes, and officials' concerns as well. Now, it was, this happened in May, and the commission actually started working immediately, as of June 2022. They had an in-person 2-day meeting in 2022, and over the course of their 1.5 years, met online almost monthly, if not more. One of the important things that they did was to reach out to create surveys in order to really get a feel of what the concerns were. One of the surveys was, as you all know, sent to the equestrian community, and was answered by approximately 28,000 respondents, which is absolutely huge. And it was sent from 116 different countries. The other survey was conducted by an independent external company, and this time was aimed at the general public. And here we targeted 14 countries that are very much involved in equestrian sport, and we received 1,000 different responses from each of these 14 targeted companies. There were also focus groups that were created in order to feed into the work of the commission. And of course, the commission consulted with external specialist groups on the latest research and considered evidence from associated social science areas from the horse industry. This was a very big and long consultative job that was done. The first report was provided to the General Assembly already in Cape Town in November of 2022. So as you can see, a lot of work was done between June and November. And then an interim report was provided to you all during the sports forum last year here. In this report, a lot of the recommendations that are included in the final report, A Good Life for Horses, were already addressed. The final report was provided to the board, as was already mentioned by the president, in November, and then the board there acknowledged and thanked the work of the Equine Ethics and Commission, and agreed that now it really was time for the FEI to basically look into this report, study the report, and come up with possible action points. Now, this has been an enormous project, as you can well imagine, and none of us has taken this lightly at all, and the work will continue to evolve. And as emphasized again by myself earlier right now, It's not only the FEI's responsibility, but rather it is a collective responsibility. And it is the duty of each national federation and stakeholder to continuously prioritize the welfare of our equine partners. So right now, I'm happy to present to you the different presenters that will be coming up with the proposals for the action points. These action points, again, will evolve over time. And I want to send a big shout of thank you to somebody who regrettably cannot be here because unfortunately she got sick, and that is Malin Axon-Nilsson, who has helped us enormously. Malin holds a PhD in ethology animal sciences from the Swedish University of Agriculture of Science, and has collaborated with our internal work group on how to base interviews, outcomes, identify, and formulate possible future actions and strategies. She has really been instrumental in helping us formulate this. So the other two presenters, they don't need much of an introduction. We have Joran Ackerstam. Joran, if you don't mind joining me on stage here, our director of the veterinary department. And we also have Mikael, who, as you all know, Mikael Rensch, who is our FEI legal director. Now, there's one thing that I want to point out before I go into how we're going to actually structure this, this session, which is, again, extremely important. And one thing that has not been tackled, and that is the communication part of the whole plan. And the reason for this is not tackled right now is that we are really keen to first gather as much feedback as possible today and leading up, and I'll explain to you how we're going to continuously seek your feedback. We really need to find out what are the final action points which will continue to evolve first before we actually do the communication strategy. So this is one element, the communications, which will be only addressed in Oman later this year. So now let me, if you allow me, let me move on to this session's agenda. So we are starting a little late than anticipated, but that is okay. We do have a lot of time still ahead of us. What we will do now is we will start with one part of the presentation. And before we break for lunch, there will be certain topics which we want your input. Now, these are specific topics. There are some really big topics which we're going to actually put on the side burner until the end of today's session before lunch, because it really requires in-depth conversation. But there will be certain items before the lunch break, before the coffee break, where we will seek your input. So now let me try to explain to you how we've gone about this. As you will all see and remember, there were 6 early recommendations. In the final report and also in the interim report, there were 24 also recommendations. And there were 6 areas of priority, which led to 32 key issues. The suggested approach by the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, and which many of you have already repeated in various correspondences that you have sent to the FEI, is that one of the things we need to ensure is that we, the FEI, be a leader, that we be trusted, that we be transparent, that we be proactive, and that we be accountable. Now, in order to be all of this, the suggested mechanism to do this are the 5 domains, which will be explained by Joran in more detail very, very shortly. And also the 6 enablers. And what are the 6 enablers? Well, the 6 enablers are, that will help us actually provide all this, is that we need evidence, we need education, we need engagement, we need effective regulation, enforcement, and empowerment. Okay? All of this together, this whole wheel, then provides the FEI equine strategy. And here, if you don't mind just joining me up here, Joran, if we could just explain how we have defined the FEI equine welfare strategy, and then I'll take it on again.
Thank you, Sabrina. Good morning, everyone. So we have formulated this equine welfare strategy, and it's, first of all, a welfare vision, a good life for horses. That was also what was advised to us by the Commission. And this is about acknowledging and respecting the natural needs of horses within the context of international equestrian sport. So why is that important? Well, horses, they can have both positive and negative emotions. They are sentient beings, that's what it means. They have specific physical and behavioral needs. And by acknowledging that and respecting it, it helps us to know, but also to show the surrounding world that we are giving them a good life. So in that, further to that, we have formed our mission. We serve as the guardians of FEI horses by formulating and implementing rules, guidelines, educational programs, and other initiatives. And if necessary, we apply sanctions to ensure good welfare with the overall mission to lead, drive, and develop equestrian sport globally. It's important to point out, we no longer say horses are our partners. Partners indicate equal standing, which is not really true, to be honest. We are the guardians. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Göran. So wait, Göran, don't go way too far, because we still have the 5 domains, which is something that you said you were going to explain, because this is really important, this part.
This is really important. The 5 domains, as suggested by the Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, is a model on how to look on welfare, but also a model that you can measure welfare with. So it starts with 4 initial domains, the first one being nutrition, having proper good feed, but also water is absolutely critical. The next one is physical environment, and that is the air quality, the stables, the light, and so on, and really the factors that will affect the horse when they are in that environment. And for us, that's very much at competitions. The third one being health and fitness. Of course, horses need to be properly treated. They need to be monitored to ensure that they have a good health. And then we have interactions. So you have interaction with the environment, and that includes the competition moment, but it can also include transports with other horses. And please note that these horses, of course, are under the same management and care to ensure a good biosecurity. And also importantly with humans, because that also plays a very important role for these horses' well-being. Combined, this creates the mental state of the horse, and a positive mental state is equal to good welfare. And it's possible to use it as a tool to educate, to work, and this is what we're going to do. So after defining and characterizing a good life for FEI horses, this model will be used as a reference when assessing and understanding the welfare of an FEI competition horse. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are you going to leave? Or?
I'm going to leave now.
Okay, fine.
I'll be sitting down.
All right, very good. So, okay, so as mentioned before, I mentioned what the enablers are, right? And here you have them. So it is through the implementation of these actual enablers that within the organization of the FEI, which has various different departments, that actually allows us to have that suggested approach, which I mentioned before, as being a leader, being proactive, being transparent, being accountable, and all of that. So that's really important. So we need to always bear that in mind. Now, how did we go about this project? Because as you can see, with the 62, with all the different recommendations and actions required, how do we go about defining what needed to be we needed to focus on? And so, as mentioned before, in the beginning, we had the 6 early recommendations. In the final report, we had 24 recommendations, and then there were priority of focuses. There were 32 key issues that were actually brought out. So in the end, we ended up with 62 action points, 62 possible action points. So what we really needed to do was first really understand, what is the FEI doing now? What are the possible actions that we need to further do? And how can the FEI collaborate with you national federations and stakeholders and other organizations, and also identify in our matrix what animal welfare domain does this actually address? So we came up with this FEI matrix or matrix of action, which helps us clarify. And in it here you can see there's one column which lists the priority area of focus that was described in by the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing. In the other column is, what is the FEI doing? What are the possible actions? How can we collaborate? The actual number of the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing recommendation, and what domain does it address? Now, how do we get to where we are right today? And there's a lot more work to come. Is that we have already initiated some consultation with some stakeholders. We have had thorough first interviews with FEI directors, and also we have been able to do it with the chair of the Endurance Committee. And what will follow now is that we will, and some changes have already taken place. As many of you know, we have the question charter that was already put in place. There are some rule changes that took place that were accepted by you all at the General Assembly. And what we need to do now is further do the interviews with the technical committees, get that input. There will be a June board meeting where we will present more information to the board. There could be possibly rule changes, and then we have to implement the education and the communication. And all of this will lead to a better life for horses. So this is what the metrics looks like, as I mentioned before. And now we will go into depth on the different actions that we discussed before. And now I'm happy to hand it over to Joran, and I'm going to hobble over to a chair, and you'll pass me my Vicky.
Thank you,
so that you can take over this.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'll be sitting, presenting this. So we have training and riding, tack and equipment in focus area 1. Oops. So movement of the horse appearing unnatural. Concerned about negative impact of rider frustration, unethical training methods, punishment-based training methods. Those were great concerns in the surveys. There were also concerns about the continued use of hyperflexion and roll cure in training and competitions, bits, nose bands and spurs. This is huge, as you all understand. And this part is actually one that we will leave to the end in regards of questions to the very end, so we have enough time and to discuss it properly. Mikael.
Thank you, Joran, for this. So one of the challenges that we are facing is regarding training methods. And we had a few occasions where we had alleged abuse of horse, and we had questions as to what is allowed as a training methods. The FEI, we mostly regulate in competition. But what happens in the private yards? What happens in the private stables? What happens in training facilities? How do you train the horse? And it varies from one discipline to another. So we believe we are missing guidelines, principles, rules, telling us exactly what is accepted as a training methods or what is not tolerated. We need to ensure ethical training methods, and we also put it out there that maybe we also need registration of trainers. We do have trainers registered in endurance. We do not have registration of trainers in other disciplines, in dressage, in jumping, in eventing. So maybe we need to have that in our regulatory system for various reasons. We can train these people, we can educate them, we can ensure that they understand their responsibility. And of course, if there are wrongdoings, it gives the FEI the jurisdiction, I'm a lawyer, it gives us the jurisdiction to potentially open disciplinary proceedings and to prevent that trainer to continue in the sport. Now, Joran, you will go to various other matters.
Thank you, Mikael. So we're addressing hyperflexion and roll cure specifically. Currently, there are guidelines in the stewards' manuals, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done because there's so much division in the community about this. There is research, but I would say we are certain that there is more needed because this is very complex. And we will resume the work that started around 15 years ago. We will continue working on that. We will do that by engaging in discussion with riders, trainers, officials, scientists, and this will lead up to rules, regulations, educations, so this becomes more clear. Bits then. So, tack and equipment is so much more than, for example, the double bridle. We have studied a lot of research. We have interviewed riders, trainers, vets, including odontologists. And it has become very clear to us that almost any tack and equipment can have a negative impact on equine welfare if not correctly fitted and not correctly used. That's absolutely critical. This is not a surprise to many of us, but the complexity of these matters have become even more apparent to us. Double bridles, for example, they can definitely cause welfare problems, but a recent and soon to be published study on Grand Prix dressage horses shows that it can also significantly lower rein tension compared to a snaffle bit used by the same rider combination doing the same exercises. So it's very complex and it's also very important to welfare. Therefore, we are suggesting to take a much broader approach on tack and equipment than originally suggested in the report. So we take a larger grip of this and we will focus strongly on it. So we have some examples of what we already are doing and plan to do in regards of tack and oral cavity health. Oops. So the project on oral cavity health has been ongoing now for about a year. We are aiming to establish a protocol to be used at FEI events. This has already been done in Denmark, for example. Part one, the literature study, has been done, and we have now formed a group of 3 experts that will help us with this. The project is budgeted. They are to produce protocols that we will evaluate in October this year. And when that phase is ready, we will move on to pilot study. Further to that, we will also benchmark information how to properly fit and use equipment. We know there's a lot out there, and it needs to be evaluated what is good and what can be useful for us. We will support research and development, produce education. We have already suggestions on material that we can use. And the dressage community will continue to discuss a non-mandatory double bridle within the rules revision process. So we had great meetings with the dressage stakeholders in Riyadh a couple of weeks ago that were really, really fruitful. And we also need to consider implementing an exhaustive list of approved tack in all disciplines. Dressage has it right now, jumping don't, which makes it very, very difficult to ensure welfare. Of course, this will lead to communication, education, and possibly also a lot of rule changes. We'll see about that. A lot of work to be done. So, Mikael.
Thank you, Göran. So the next one is the noseband. As you all know, I'm a specialist of noseband. No, I'm not, but I've been involved in the process, and maybe let's take a step back. So where are we today? What is the FEI doing? So we had that protocol or general rules that has been approved by the General Assembly in Mexico in 2023. It was a rocky road to get it approved, but we managed to have it approved. What we had agreed was to delay the implementation so that the rule would be fully effective as of the 1st of January 2025. The reason is that we need to establish the protocols, we need to develop the FEI objective measuring tool. We have already produced some of them. We are still in the testing phase. We are working with external experts as well who are providing great feedback on that. Obviously, the protocols will be different from one discipline to another. The main reason is we want to ensure that the timing will be right. When do we measure the tightness of the noseband? And we also want to ensure that we do it ideally before the competition. So we avoid the bad images, we avoid that the horse might suffer. So we want to be preventive. Obviously, if it's being used and abused during competition, there will be consequences, but we want to really try to avoid that. We will collaborate with all the stakeholders groups. The goal is once the tool is being ready and available, we will do tests in various disciplines. We will work with the officials. Obviously, they play a key role in that. We need the stewards to do the checks. We need them to be familiar with it. We need, obviously, the input from the riders. We need the input from the grooms. We need the input from anyone involved in the various disciplines. So the implementation is still to be 1st of January 2025. I know that time is running and everybody is eager to understand exactly how it's going to function. We do our best to do it, and I thank the team at headquarters who are leading that, Anna Criche and Gonzalo, who are heavily involved in that. So bear with me, with us. We are on it, and we will be reaching out to you soon so that we will give you a more comfortable situation so you feel that the process is right. We'll need to educate the officials. That's very key. The stewards will need to know exactly what they need to do, how and when. So that's very important. We will obviously share the protocols with everyone also for feedback. And very important, the objective measuring tool, we are not going to hide it. We want to make it available to anyone. Anyone will be able to purchase it so that you can have it at home, you can have it when training, can have it at competition, so that the grooms, the riders, the officials, everyone will know how this is going to function. I think the next one is for you, Joran.
Thank you, Mikael. Indeed, it is. So recognizing physical and emotional stress, priority area number 2. So equestrians being unable to recognize stress-related behavior in their horses. Horses experiencing emotional stress during training and at competition events. And horses' physical health issues being poorly cared for and addressed. Safety issues and death of horses during competition. So, what are we doing? We already have some risk management programs in place to identify risk factors, and I want to especially point out eventing. Through that work, they have been extremely successful by reducing horse rotational falls with more than 50%. And also the endurance rules are based on a very proper, very thorough and large analysis of identify risk factors that was done within the GIS project led by Professor Parkin. We have mandatory, very qualified, very comprehensive post-mortem protocols that actually have been benchmarked by other major regulatory body, including government bodies. We also have a post-event fatality project between the endurance committee and the veterinary committee. We are looking at fatalities that could occur after the event due to metabolic issues mainly. So we will continue working this as we are doing, and of course, as much as ever possible, have evidence-based updating of the rules. There's one thing that I really want to reach out to you, and that is we would like to have post-mortem reports in all disciplines from national federations, because the data sets are now too small to really draw conclusions from, which of course is a good thing that we don't have that many fatalities compared to some other sports. But by getting that data, getting those reports from the national federations, we would increase that and we could draw much better conclusions and improve the quality of the research.
So what we're searching here is post-mortem reports from national events.
National events, indeed. National events. Thank you, Sabrina. Mikael.
Thank you, Johan. So now there are two items that will be open for discussion before the coffee break, and that is the equestrian charter and abuse of horse. I'm just going to run through a few of the slides, and then we can have your feedback and questions and output. So the first one, equestrian charter here as well. I can do with the
okay.
thank you,
cool.
Johan. I'll try to remember what is next and what is not. Bear with me. First one, equestrian charter. Where are we today? So the equestrian charter has been approved by the General Assembly, is included in the general regulations. That is great, but we will see thereafter how we can implement it and disseminate the information. Abuse of horse, we have solid rules in the general regulations. I'll also expand a little bit later. What we want to implement, what we want to do, we want to facilitate the reporting mechanism to the FEI. Because at the moment, it's a little bit of a chaotic situation where people will send an email to info@fei.org, or they will contact comms, they will send links to social media videos or comments or things like that, but there is no real structure, and we are sometimes missing key information. So we have produced a reporting form that will allow anyone to report alleged abuse of horse, and it will also allow the FEI to receive the key information from the beginning, so that we avoid a lot of exchanges of emails or phone calls with the people wanting to report alleged abuse of horse. Now, other potential or possible matters that the FEI needs to do is to update the FEI Code of Conduct for the welfare of the horse. And there I think we would really want to continue the collaboration with the World Horse Welfare. We really value your work. Your feedback is really key to us, so we need to continue the dialogue and work with you. We obviously have an MOU with you, and we need to have specialists to be able to tackle what needs to be included and strengthened in the Code of Conduct. We need to educate the stakeholders. That's very key. We need to educate National Federation. We need to educate riders, grooms, officials, anyone involved in equestrian sport, basically. And also something that we want to do is to provide model rules to National Federation. So it's something that would be easy, if I may, to implement for National Federation. Obviously, you have your own process, you have your own consultation with your stakeholders, but we believe that we need to do that. And I'll also expand as to what we need to include. So if we start with the FEI Equestrian Charter, it's Appendix O of the General Regulations. I think you know it, so it's great. It's in the rules, so everyone involved and registered with the FEI or accredited at an event is bound by the Equestrian Charter. But does it mean that everyone knows about it? Do the riders know about it? Do the officials know about it? So we need to make sure that we disseminate the information. We need to make sure that people understand the obligations. What does it mean? So one first step that the FEI can do, so that the possible actions and suggestions from us is, we do have MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with various stakeholders group, with the IGRC. I see members of the IGRC here. We have so the International Jumping Riders Club. We have the same with Officials Club in various disciplines. We would include references in this MOU with the various stakeholders groups so that they also understand and they agree to be bound by that and to disseminate the information to their members. We could include the charter in the FEI horse app. Now we have great tools with the horse app, everyone is using it. So the first time they would log in, they would have a pop-up. I haven't really discussed with our TSS department about it, but I'm pretty sure they will be able to implement it quite easily. While it seems always easy to me, but then I understand that from a technical point of view, it's not always that straightforward, but I think it would be a good tool. So people, when they log in, they need to have the text, agree to be bound by the Equestrian Charter. We could also include it in the examinations for the officials so that they also understand what it means. They also understand their responsibility to take actions as well when there are things that are going wrong at events. We could have the Equestrian Charter oath in opening ceremonies at major events, World Championships, European Championships, and the likes. And also something that we really need you as well is we would want ideally national federations to have the charter implemented in national rules. And I understand that some of you, I believe maybe the British Equestrian Federation has already implemented it, and maybe we can hear back from them as to how was the process, how do they do, and what it means for their community to have this equestrian charter. Abuse of horse, as I said, we have rules in the general regulations. I think that we have two major principles that are often missing at national federation level. First one is the FEI may act when abuse of horse happen out of competition, not linked to an FEI event. If it happened in private stables, if the horse is registered with the FEI, if the athlete is registered with the FEI, we have jurisdiction. We can take actions. Recently, in the past weeks or months, the FEI had to step in on some matters that happened because the National Federation rules were not solid enough. The National Federation didn't have jurisdiction. So we would want more the National Federation to have a better role or key role in helping us prosecuting cases. And the other thing that is quite important for us is there is no statute of limitation. So if an abuse of horse happened 5 years ago and we only discover it now, we are able to prosecute the case. We understand that some national federations have a limitation. After a few months, 1 year, 2 years, they cannot act anymore. It doesn't look good because we know that when a scandal is arising or when you see images on social media, that's what is happening a lot. More and more we see bad images, videos on social media, and if you are not able to act because your rules don't allow you to act, it's not that easy to have the correct reactive messaging to say, oh yeah, we are aware, but we cannot do anything. So there as well, if we provide you with model rules, we would give you the right tools so that you will be able to implement it at national level. That's a snapshot of what we have today in the general regulations. I also took the opportunity to make you aware of what we are doing at headquarters. So you can see the list of offenses, and that was approved a few years ago. We basically have categories of abuse of horse. You have the low end, not that serious, but still not great. You have the mid-range, you have specific sanction or range of sanctions. You have the top end, and you have the maximum, which is a lifetime ban. We haven't imposed a lifetime ban yet, but we do have the possibility in our rules. What is happening in practice, so in competition, there might be situations where there is abuse of horse. We headquarters, FEI headquarters, receive reports from the relevant FEI officials, and they will, hopefully, if there is an incident, they will provide us with information. They will provide us with pictures, with video, with a list of witnesses, and then they will also tell us what they have done. Now, what the officials on site can do is sometimes limited. So they can give a yellow warning card, they can give a fine, but they cannot suspend an athlete. So what we do now, we review all the reports, we review also the yellow warning cards, and we see what has actually happened. And the rules, the FEI rules, allow the FEI legal department to open separate proceedings. Even though there was a yellow warning card, maybe it deserved a higher sanction. And we do that. We do open disciplinary proceedings. And we can even impose up to 3 months suspension for minor offenses, and it's through the administrative disciplinary proceedings. That's a great tool, but I think the riders need also to be aware, because sometimes they believe, oh, I received yellow warning card and that's it, it's over. No, maybe there will be separate proceedings. We also try, and I say try because it has happened in the past that we have not updated the officials that were at the event, but I think it's important. If an official reports an incident, they need to know the follow-up. They need to understand what was the outcome afterwards. So we really want to do that. So as I said, we urge all the NASH federation to implement the same rules as the FEI, so that when it's happening out of competition, you are able to act, and hopefully with no statute of limitation. So it's not the coffee break yet. Sorry, I thought there was a slide questions. So I'm really sorry for the hope that you could get caffeine or thein already, but I would want to have some questions or comments from the audience, please. And if you could raise your hand, and then when you have the microphone, if you could please say your name and who you are. And also here we have the lights quite bright in our eyes, so I don't necessarily see who is asking the question, so please. And you can also stand, and we have people online as well, so then they know. So at this instant, we are going to address 2 items, the equestrian charter and the abuse of horse. That's all. For all the other items, noseband, roll cur, training methods, and the likes and bits, that will be done after the coffee break, when you have much more energy to ask questions and comments. Yes, please.
Hello, Diana Al-Shar from Palestine Equestrian Federation. I'm also an active dressage rider. That's why I just want to give you a little bit from the angle of the rider, our feedback. It's amazing the job that you are doing, but I think that the communication is the key. We say about ethic commission, but what is really missing in the communication today is ethics. And I know it's very difficult to control, but I think only together we can achieve some improvement. I think, like suggestion from our side, I think riders and in general audience has to be aware more about the work you're doing here. Not during the sport forum, there should be maybe more educational events, roundtables organized, communication also with the media. And I think we all are aware that our sports now, because of the social media, has much more access of people and audience. So maybe we can have example from other top sports how to work with the media as well, because very often information given is not really, it's taken out of the context. We as riders are, to be honest, feeling a little bit being attacked. Also the warm-ups, of course we need to improve and get better, but again our communication has to be improved. Maybe to have people at the shows as well at CDIs, normal CDIs, like we have stewards, but people responsible for, from the ethic commission, maybe there should be dedicated people who could work also with the media, there definitely has to be improvement, because again, at the moment we are very much divided. So more educational events, roundtables, press conferences, and maybe people really responsible for this bridge between the media and the riders. And these people have to be, of course, from the equine ethics, but also aware of sports and actually knowing the sports. So we have to work together towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and we couldn't agree with you more. Communication is key, and as I mentioned in my introduction, we will not be presenting today the whole communication strategy, because it really is a whole different game. We do know that we need to work more with social media. We have to see how that works out, and couldn't agree with you more than all the different comments that you provided, and that we will be doing and working, hopefully presenting at the session at the General Assembly as to the actual strategy, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that end. So thank you for that.
We have a question here on the François Maty from IGRC.
Hello. Thank you very much. I saw this presentation was excellent. I hope you can share it. I think it was very clear. This is a sport forum, sport federation. And you know, when we hear talking about rules, and I think it's very important also to remember the sport. And when I see, for example, the double bridle, who seems sometimes to be presented, there's a lot of talk about it. And sometimes, you know, I think from the outside world, it must look like an arm of massive destruction. I don't even know where it came from, because basically, I speak for our discipline. It's when you have a strong horse, it's not a bit that we use to say this is going to solve the problem. I never saw it like a strong bit, so every time I hear the discussion about it, I don't even know where it came from. But basically, where I want to come to is good to have lawyers, vets, but I think we are the ones who are riding with these equipments. We are the one involved. It's like if you start talking to a Formula One driver and take away his steering wheel and his brakes. I mean, the precision that we have to ride in these courses, well, depends not only on the results, but also on our safety. You know, if you don't want to see crashes, we need to be precise. We need to be able to use these tools. And like you said very well, you know, when some people, like in everything, every sport, or in the society, you know, bad use of the things, then it looks bad. But basically, I think you must really keep us involved in this discussion, because this is key for us. And even the noseband, which also seemed to be accepted that a tight noseband is bad, well, when my horse passes the tongue over the bit, it's worse for him and for us also. So it's very, very important to keep us involved in those discussions.
Yeah, thank you, François. And that's good. And I think you also saw the work on the FEI TAC app, where we actually wanted to give clarity as to what can be used and what is permitted and not permitted at events. Initially, that was done by mainly FEI headquarters and our external experts, but now we have included, and especially in jumping, we have included kind of a working group which is represented by riders who give their feedback prior to a decision being made. So we need the feedback, and I think it's Max Kühner is in that, and Rodrigo Pessoa as athletes representative. So we get your perspective, we get your feedback as well, so that we have a better understanding, and then we take a decision that is also better accepted by the community and by the riders. It's not always easy, but I fully agree with you, François, as well, that many items are fine when they are correctly used, and when they are not correctly used, that's where we are having issues. And I always take the example, if you have a car that can drive 200 kilometers an hour, but there are speed limitation in the city, if it's 50 in Switzerland, 50 or 120 on the highway, if you drive that speed, it's totally fine. Of course, if you start driving crazy, then there will be accidents, there will be more issues, and I think it's the same with TAC and equipment. Many of the items are fine. They may be abused and they may hurt the horse, but if they are correctly used, correctly fitted, there is no issue, and that's where we need to find the right balance. And we're also struggling a little bit as to the regulatory framework. I don't necessarily like rules and things like that, but sometimes we need clarity, and we also need to understand the rationale why a certain piece of equipment has been accepted or not, or why it should be permitted or not. Any other question? I see question on the top. Theodore, I think.
Thank you. Theodore Shaitanov, level 3 jumping judge. A few years ago, I was involved as a foreign judge in one case. I'm very glad to hear that now you would like to bind the coaches, because in jumping the coaches were not part of the game. And we had a case which was difficult to bind the athlete and the coach. We reported the case. We had 2 hearings with the legal department. Later on, the case went to the tribunal. We had hearing with the law company which was presenting FEI to the tribunal. And then, by incident, I understood that the athlete and the so-called coach, they are suspended for years, which was good. But my recommendation is, if we have cases, serious cases like this, to have feedback to the officials and to have, if necessary, a meeting and to discuss what was correct, what we as officials, what correctly we implemented and what not, because I still have doubts that if we implemented everything correctly And I still think what differently I will do. I think this is very important for the officials' education. So this is just a remark and recommendation.
Yeah, thank you. You're totally right, and we will see also later that now we do also much more education, and if I take also the level 4 judges as well, now they come to FEI headquarters, there are role play, there are case studies, there are things, there are simulation, there are situations that they need to deal with so that they can really understand what may happen at an event. But it's true, when there are true incidents at an event, then we need to learn from it, and we say, okay, could the FEI official have done differently at event? Maybe they could have prevented it, maybe not. Maybe they were aware of it, maybe they were not. So that's where we need also your feedback, and we need you to tell us also how we can help you. Maybe you couldn't see it for whatever reason. So it also depends on the discipline. Obviously, if you have an incident in endurance, well, you have loops of 20 kilometers. So maybe if it's happening at kilometer 12, there is nobody witnessing it. It's a little bit simpler when it's an indoor show. You are in closed environment, so you have a better understanding of what is happening. But for sure, the feedback and the interaction with the officials is key. You can choose.
Johan, Swedish question. Overall, well balanced, well worked so far, impressive, and also that we take steps when it comes to the relation between the sports and the private training. Very good. Looking forward to bringing this forward. This was the first session. We've been excited to take the next section.
Thank you. Maybe next, yeah.
Jim Eyre from British Equestrian. You mentioned the charter that we developed. In fact, we took on your charter, the FEI charter, which we thought was good. Of course, we've got a lot more member bodies than just FEI bodies. Went through a long journey from the Olympic disciplines all the way through to polo cross to whoever. It took about 5 months. It went wider than that, but actually it was an open door. Everyone wanted to push. They know, I wouldn't say the crisis we're in, but they understand the social pressure we're under, and we have to be seen to be acting. The issue is actually how to turn it into reality and to make sure it cascades throughout the sector, but it's a really good start. And I also commend the work you're doing here.
So, but just to get a little more information on that, is it okay? Is it it's included in your rules and your regulations? Is there something that they actively have to do in order to take ownership of the charter? So how do you go about it?
Just defining it was an issue in itself. 6 key points that went from empathy and respect, ethics, and learning of individuals to make sure, a bit like yours, that everyone. No one is a fully briefed up person, everyone's got something to learn. We will bake it into the rules for next year. That will also be cascaded through our member bodies, so 2025 it will be baked in.
Maybe in the front.
Hello everyone, my name is Olga. I'm still level 3 dressage steward. So I think that we should, in frame of education, we should think about stewarding, especially in dressage, that we should have stewards with riding background, because you can make all of these clear instructions and measuring equipment, but if you have no this sense of deal with horse training methods and so on. Sometimes stewards, they do not understand if it's training methods or it's already abuse. Even with all this, I think German table with all this face impression of the horse, ear position, tail position, so on. But if you have your riding experience, sometimes you can't understand the meaning and what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. One follow-up question for you. Do you think there is enough stewards with that background? Because I understand as well that we need many stewards at events, so the pool of stewards needed is quite massive, and do you believe that most of them would have that riding background?
Actually, I have no idea about other countries. In our country, usually in stewarding, we have people with horse riding background. It's not about in dressage stewards should have dressage background. No, just I'm jumping myself. So, and the other thing I would like to mention, maybe we should, again, about stewarding education, we should add some kind of, psychology of stewarding, because we are inside the game, not outside, and we have a lot of communication with everyone, with organizing committee officials, riders, our colleagues, coaches, parents, and so on and so on. So we should be quite good psychologists, and we need to know methods of win-win communication and something like that.
Yeah, and I think as well, when officials take tough decisions on site, they need to be backed up by the FEI, and in the end, you are the FEI. You're acting on behalf of the FEI. So I think it's important for you as officials to know that. If you take, because of course, if you eliminate a rider, the rider is not going to be happy. But if it was the right decision, because you need to take your responsibility, we will always back you up and we will help you. And you should not be afraid of that. You should not be afraid of retaliation from anyone. You need to take the right decisions on site. On the back. The front.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for bringing this up. It's wonderful, it's clear, everybody understands. On the other hand, I would like to say, yes, I do agree with François, and I do agree with Olga, absolutely. Because it is very important that everybody realizes that I'm speaking as a dressage TD, that we look more at how the tool, the bit or the rein is used than actually the tool itself. And if we are talking about stewarding, I would not like to be a steward, honestly. It's so an ungrateful job. But on the other hand, we need more stewards which are riders, who are knowledgeable more about our sport. It's important. And yes, the riders should all have their little say in it. And once again, I think it's not the tool, but the one who uses it that we have to take care of and inform. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe, yeah, in the front there, and then George. Here, and then on the front row. Thank you.
Hi, Jason Broughtaghan, British Dressage. I just wanted to follow on from what Jim said, and in response to Sabrina's question, we already embedded both the FEI Equestrian Charter and our expanded Charter for the Horse within our own rules, and I think that's really important. It has to be embedded in order for it to have any real meaning. The important thing I wanted to stress is how well received it was by all of our stakeholders, without question, right the way across the whole of the sport. People welcomed the fact that there was strong leadership, and I think importantly, when it comes to the abuse of the horse, there needs to also be strong action in terms of sanctions. And the only way we can do that is if it is embedded within the rules. So I think absolutely that's the right way forward.
Thanks, that's great. That's very positive, and I hope many national federations will do the same in their own rules. Question here, yeah.
Good morning, George Dimaras, FEI Board, but also Greek Federation. Just to clarify, bullet number 3 comes after number 2, or are they separate? Are they independent from each other?
They are separate, and it may happen that there was a yellow warning card at events and then we review it, or maybe there was no sanction at the event for whatever reason. Either the officials were too soft and they didn't take their responsibility, or they were not aware of the situation that occurred, and then we receive it maybe through social media, through various channels, and then we open separate proceedings. And then I say that the legal department, we may sanction up to 3 months, but we may also open disciplinary proceedings for, let's say, more serious offenses, and then it will go to the tribunal, and then there is a whole process. But yeah.
Thanks for the first clarification. And now second, speaking as my national federation hat here, urging all national federations, for sure, and all national federations should do, but I think federations will need some guidance, some instructions, and also the logic behind it, because many federations, including the Greek Federation, they incorporate the FEI rules within their national rules, and this would give legitimacy and justification, and also the support that is needed to present it to the national equestrian communities and get all the support, because it always depends on the different federations and the size, the horse culture, the maturity of the equestrian community in the country to accept these kind of things. But I think we will need some more guidance and instructions, and I think many federations would incorporate these rules in their national regulations very quickly if they get this kind of frame. Thank you.
That's the goal. That's basically for you to have a toolkit, to have the rationale why you need this, and then to have that model rule so that you only need to make reference to your disciplinary body if there is sanction to be imposed. But yeah, that's what we want to do. And obviously, they will also need to be translated, and happy for us to translate in the main languages so that we can also implement it, like if it's in Spanish or Latin America, and the Spanish Federation can also implement it so that we facilitate the work for you guys. Question over there on the left.
Bram van der Wallen from the Equestrian Organizers Alliance. Thank you for the presentation. We agree that it's about communication and education, and we are not in favor of too many rules. However, is an organizer allowed to impose its own more strict rules, or does that go via the federation or via the international federation?
So organizers cannot have their own rules, because we need to have clarity, and we need to ensure that people are aware of what they are subject to. But if there are any feedback as to recommendation as to what you feel from an organizer perspective would help you, happy to look at it and to implement it in a broader, wider spectrum, so that then because what we want as well is consistency. If an incident happened in France, or the same incident happened in Finland or elsewhere in the world, we want the same outcome. Otherwise, it's difficult as well to justify why in one situation there was one outcome, in another situation which is the same, there is a different outcome. But happy to take any feedback from you guys.
Coffee break. Okay, Quentin, and then maybe we will break for lunch. I mean, not for lunch, sorry, excuse me, for a coffee break. A short coffee break, and we continue because there's a lot more of material that we have to demonstrate.
Microphone there, yeah. Can we have a microphone here in the middle? Down, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Also related to the previous point, and I'm curious to get your view, even if by the last point you are quite straightforward on the fact that you expect from national federation to implement the same rules also when it comes to problem out of competition, but you also know that a national jurisdiction beyond the national federation jurisdiction are also applying. So that's, we have not all the levers into our hands. Of course, as national federation, we must do everything possible, but we don't have every tool possible.
No, we are fully aware, but I think it will be also good to identify this, because then if we have an incident situation, we can explain why we couldn't have the right rule or right mechanism, why we couldn't act, because there are indeed restrictions in some countries. Point taken. So shall we break for lunch now? Coffee break, sorry. Coffee break, coffee.
I got the picture.
We're gonna break for 15 minutes. We'll be back at 11:15. I want to thank Agria for offering the coffee break. Thank you. Please be back on time, because there's a lot more material to deal with. Thank you.
je pense que ça va dépendre des gens. Parce que nous, c'était Sabrina, on n'arrivait pas à lire. Et je pense qu'avant chaque session, il faut demander aux gens comment ils veulent que ça. Là et là, comme ça, ils savent à l'avance. Parce que si tu as le next slide, des fois, c'est écrit tout petit.
Ouais, mais
pour la qualité des yeux.
Pour vous, comme ça va.
Comme ça va.
So now what are you going to do? Maintenant, il y a quoi
Maintenant, c'est moi. Et c'est Accountability, Enforcement and Knowledge. Avec le Field of Play Regulation. Puis après, Key Staff Education. Then Item Sanction Officials, blah blah blah. Et puis Item to Subgrade. Lots of bullshit a bit. You know what is this one? Actually,
authority to use
cameras on competition venues. What is this? I have no idea what it is.
Well, isn't that the CCTV?
That's what I thought.
Right, it must be that. What else?
I guess, no?
We can decide when to use.
Activate, yeah. I'll use
Just say that CCTV cameras. It's the use of CCTV cameras at selected events. Right. What else?
Then it's the other 23 hours. That's year-round. Year-round, the other 23 hours. Commercial interest being more highly prefers, which is year-round.
So maybe afterwards, when we start, when there are open questions about at the end, what would be interesting is like, okay, we have now a question regarding this, and then now we'll take any other questions surrounding the specific aspect. After that person has asked that question.
Say it again.
Let's say at the end of the sessions, when we open up for questions. So somebody raised their hand, said, "I'd like to talk about training." Very good. The first person who then we say, okay, now we're going to talk about training.
Okay.
Now we will regroup it so that anybody else on training? Anybody else here?
Can you moderate that one?
I'm happy to. We see. We help each other. I mean, I see there, you see there. If you. Est-ce qu'on a somebody rung the bell? Wait, put the video. Where's Joran?
It's me first.
Yeah. We need to get started.
I start first.
Hey, come on here, and we'll put the video on.
I will, because I start with 1, 2, 3, 4 slides. So I will do it. And I give it to you, and then I give it to
Dr. G. All right.
I wish. So I will wait a few seconds so that people can come and sit. We will resume the session. If you could please take your seat so that we can start the session, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, there was no bell.
Ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Thank you for joining your seats. We are just about to start. We're not being very punctual here. Thank you.
Maybe people were waiting for lunch, but no, there was no lunch. It was coffee break. Yeah. Nancy, let's have dinner.
Kindly take your seats as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so one door has been closed, and we are now just about to start.
And maybe also say that there are about 60 people that are watching online, but there were no questions. But the people watching online can also ask questions through the chat, and then we will read out the question here, just for information. So thank you for being back. I hope the lunch was great. Not much food, I guess, for a lunch. No, thank you. So let's resume the session. So now we are on accountability, enforcement, and knowledge. Judges rewarding dysfunctional locomotion or expression instead of harmony and accurate biomechanics. Judges rewarding big names rather than best performance. Stewards not enforcing the rules and deficient in their intervention. We already tackled a little bit that. Lack of adequately trained stewards, and so on. So what are we doing? What did the FEI do? You may recall that there was an early recommendation that we needed to have a field of play regulation across all disciplines. Initially, the comment was that we should include it in the general regulations. But actually, the good news is that many disciplines already had provisions allowing the official, the ground jury, to stop a performance during competition so that if there are some horse welfare concern, it could be tackled. So the wording there has been tweaked since then and has been included in all disciplines. So there is no further change to be made on that. Now we basically need officials, ground jury members, to take the responsibility if there is an incident happening during competition, and we want them to eliminate or to stop the performance if there are concerns. What else is the FEI doing? So as we mentioned already before the coffee break, we do follow up on incidents and address the matter. I also didn't mention earlier, but basically if an FEI official is failing with their obligation, we may also open proceedings against that official. That's one comment we received from the athletes. So we need to be compliant with all the rules. We can be eliminated, but what do you do if an FEI official is not doing his job properly? Then, of course, we can take actions. Education, again, we educate officials. I mentioned the level 4, where they come for a full week training at FEI headquarters, and they do case studies, simulations. We interact with athletes. There were meetings in Riyadh in conjunctions with the World Cup finals. We need to continue the dialogue. We have discussions with the IGRC as well here during the sports forum and on other occasions. We really continue to do that. We need the feedback from the athletes, as we heard also from François Maty earlier. We implement and enforce the rules. That's very important, that if we have rules, they need to be done. Then FEI has also the possibility to use CCTV cameras at events. At the Olympic Games, for example, we have our integrity unit, which has or will install CCTV cameras in the stables. That also, I don't want to scare my colleagues, but be ready to follow that course or similar courses on the 5 domains. we basically need to have the knowledge in-house as well and better understanding of all these 5 domains. Another proposal as well is to produce video-based simulations for training of judges in all disciplines. That's very important, again, that we give the right material to all our officials. How can we work together, collaborate? Communication, we tackled before, and Sabrina mentioned as well that the communication will be on the next phase, as well as to how do we communicate with all our stakeholders group, national federation, athletes, and the likes, and how we ensure that people are aware. We need to inform and educate. I think there are many initiatives that are being done at the FEI, and not everyone is aware of these initiatives and work that is being done. Sports Forum is great. We heard comment before from an athlete. Sports Forum is great, but we need to do much more in between sports forums every year and during the whole year. Education, I'm not going to be back on education. Now, we do have officials exchange programs. That's currently happening. That's great that they can exchange their experiences. Dialogue with teams of officials. We also try to have, let's say, we had the Olympic Games. We have ground juries that are going to officiate there. It's good that they are able to work together. So we try to have them appointed at various events prior to the major events so that they know how to interact, how to work, and they know how to assign responsibilities so that it's much easier to then work together at the events. We have various funds that have been approved and allocated. We have lots of collaboration with scientists and experts on various projects. We have the footing standards, we have the oral cavity health, and we have, of course, the FEI objective measuring tool that I mentioned earlier. Possible FEI actions, FEI campus upgrades. So our colleagues from the Education Official Department are working on, actually have worked on, let's say, campus 2.0. So they are making changes, they are making new functionalities. So it's allowing us to have stronger tools to disseminate and to receive information and material. Then also maybe to request stakeholders to complete the modules on horse welfare. So we do have lots of material on FEI campus, and we want people to be aware of these materials, and then maybe they will need to complete that course as well so that they understand the obligations. Again, dialogue with officials, ongoing as always. Increase the evaluation and implementation of evidence-based knowledge, and then implement the precautionary principles. Now, how can you support? Again, we need to work with national federations, and it would be great for national federations to also have their education programs as well for their population at regional, national level, because these people are likely to then come to the FEI, but we should not start educating the top level athletes, but it should start from the grassroots. Education programs on horse management for grooms, stable managers, and farriers. It's also good that now we have the International Grooms Association as well, so we have much more interactions with the grooms. The grooms play a key role in equestrian sport, as you all know, so we need to continue the work or to actually start and to improve the relationship and the experience and sharing knowledge with the Grooms Association. Veterinary scholarships programs, that's more for, I'm not sure, Joran, what you meant there, but they are licensed veterinarians to expand their clinical skills. We need to be able to use on their expertise and also science-based knowledge. And then share insight and initiate dialogue with stakeholders on evidence-based knowledge. That's also one thing that we hear a lot said, what is your basis for allowing or not allowing this type of equipment, for example? So we need to have much more studies. We need to be able to demonstrate why we are doing things. Now I hand over to Joran regarding the other 23 hours that you know has been one of the key elements as well from the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission.
Thank you, Mikael. Just back to the previous slide and the implementation of the precautionary principle. it's very important to point out that this is not an overarching principle that we're going to apply to everything where we don't know. It needs to be carefully evaluated in relation to risk, and most importantly, we need to identify items of research, because if you rush something, even if you think it's precautionary, you must be aware that there's always a risk for unexpected consequences. So it's a very important part of the decision-making process, but it's not overarching everything else, because that could actually lead to problematic situations. So the other 23 hours, as Mika said, this is extremely important. That is 24 hours, and we're talking about the absolute majority of time that horses spend, and that is outside competitions. There were concerns addressed to the Commission about inappropriate housing facilities, just poor stabling, and that horses spend way too much time in a box with not sometimes enough space and lack of turnout. We know that many of the top athletes are really good in addressing that, but this needs to be all across, also down to the national federation level. In some countries this is easy, other countries it's a huge challenge to do this, depending on access to ground, but also climate conditions. Also lack of opportunities to show natural behavior, and that our stakeholders were ignoring the horse's basic needs. But with the 5 domains model, we will be better equipped to address this matter, but also stakeholders better equipped to evaluate their own horses. Lack of opportunities for social contact, which is kind of links very closely into 4.2. Unsuitable diets and insufficient roughage, and overprotective owners keeping their horses inside. These links very much into each other, as you see. So, what are we doing? Mikael has mentioned the equestrian charter, abuse of horses. We have a lot of material on FEI campus, and we have FEI Solidarity, where they're just incredible catalog of courses and education that really needs to be used. And a lot of that material is of very high quality that maybe somehow can be used in other way. That's something that I haven't spoken to Jean-Philippe yet, but I will, I promise. We're also, further to what has been said by Mikael, we will be proposing this afternoon implementation of an out-of-competition testing program, and that is really important for the anti-doping aspects. More about that in the afternoon. It's also a possibility through the 5 domains. There's material out there that can be used for self-control programs or self-assessment. The rider evaluates the welfare of their horse. And these are tools that are available. I know World Horse Welfare has some fantastic material on that. For example, there are also others, and we will be looking into how that can be used. We will have a discussion point on this afterwards. So then looking at the competitive drive, the horse as a number, the horse as an object. That money means more than the horse welfare. That's one key item that was addressed. There was also a lot of pressure, concerns over pressure on riders and horses to perform even if they are not really fit or prepared for it. Individuals' egos, that could be owners, riders, chef d'équipes, a big push. I think riders that have been in the Olympics, they can feel the pressure. I know that has been addressed a number of times. And this has also been subject to concern in the surveys performed by the Ethics and Wellbeing Commission. There's not enough knowledge out there, and horses being treated as machines and not as sentient beings. So sentient, that is ability to feel both positive and negative emotions. The short version. So what are we doing in that field? An example is that we have already budgeted on a major epidemiology study using our own data, career profiling of show jumping horses. And this is to identify and evaluate the risk factors connected to the longevity of the career. Does the careers end sooner than was really necessary? That's what we're going to look at, the risk factors for that. And this will be conducted by the same team that was very successful in doing that with endurance. That work led to new endurance rules. I don't think that would be the case with jumping, but certainly there will be items that we can pick up and put into the rules, put into education. Let's see what comes out of it. It's a very interesting project, and it's a PhD student at a university that will be working with this. So these results, we can use them, rule improvements to safeguard horse welfare. Another item is to actually review what we have in place in all disciplines and identify items that potentially could jeopardize welfare. And this is a work that will commence within the FEI headquarters as soon as ever possible. Again, how do we work with natural federations and other stakeholders? It's about education, information, communication, but there's also a lot of good benchmarks. I've been part of working with the Swedish legislation, and maybe this is kind of blowing their own trumpet, but it's still, there's some really good stuff in relation to fitness to compete in that legislation. And we need to work also closely with stakeholders such as the World Breeding Federation of Sport Horses, because they have projects themselves on research. And if we can combine our research with theirs, it can actually have a huge potential for improvements. And now the last priority area of focus, not fit to compete, masking health problems, use of drugs or medical procedures to extend competitive life, use of drugs to mask health problems, hide health issues, horses not being fit to compete and yet still competing, and doping issues with our enforcement. I think we are already very strong in this thing. We need to improve it even further though, and we will show this afternoon some of the items we are proposing. So we have the Equine anti-doping and controlled medication program. It's global since 2016. We are also currently developing methods for in-competition testing, and I will come to that later this afternoon. We have limb sensitivity control, hyposensitivity control in endurance, where we check if a horse has, for example, been denerved or somehow have reduced sensitivity in their lower limb. It has brought down the catastrophic injuries in endurance at the FEI events to an extremely low level when it comes to those fractures, breakdowns that we used to see. We have hypersensitivity control in jumping. We have expanded that program a lot in the last few years, and we continue to develop it. And it's something that always requires a lot of ear to the ground, talking to the riders, talking to the vets, grooms, understanding what we could do to be more precise in our controls. And we know that is very appreciated by the top riders at competitions. In endurance, there are GPS equipment on horses and riders, so they can be monitored all over the course, even if it's a 20-kilometer loop. We will know where they are, and it's possible to actually look them up and check them out on the field of play. We currently have a study ongoing using modern technology to evaluate fitness to compete. It's the SLAPE app checking if that could possibly be used as a support at horse inspections. So that is ongoing right now. And we're also establishing a standard for footing of horse inspection area, because very often the warm-up or even competition arena is used for that, and it's inconsistent. We have evidence of that. It's unfair, and it will actually not show certain types of lameness, while others actually, you can have like a false positive that some like muscle stiffness actually can look worse than it actually is due to that. So we will come up with a standard for footing in the horse inspection area. We have already planned, it was decided in the FEI veterinary committee meeting a few weeks back, that we will have a vet delegate seminar in early 2025 to discuss how to control horses' fitness to compete. Completely open-minded, how we do this in the best possible way. We will also have a review of the principles on how we list substances on the FEI Equine prohibited substance list. It's already been planned. We can support NFs and other stakeholders by providing good examples of medication control. Many would have our rules implemented already, but we can also support with education. So some NF send their candidate testing vets to our courses, and then they use them with our rules in their own system, which is perfectly fine. That's great if they can do that. That's a good way of benchmarking. We have the Clean Sport program with a lot of material that is available for you already, and it's been for a long time. It's a fantastic material. We have the detection time list. We always strive to expand it, and this is to guide veterinarians how they treat horses. And we have recently, with very kind support from International Racing, received material on quite a large number of substances that can be published on this list. We have, as you've seen, educations. We have a fantastic prohibited substances course that Katarina Termini has produced on FEI campus, and I hope you've also seen Respect Your Horse. That's right, Katarina? Sorry? Think outside the box. It's all about respecting the horse. And it's a fantastic campaign, I think, that more should be using also on a national level. That's me. Okay, I'll take this one. There were also other recommendations outside the 6 focus areas. And one of them was, and we're just giving an example, we're actually addressing a lot more in the matrix. As you will see, not all recommendations have been addressed in today's presentation, but many of them will be in the, also those will be in the FEI matrix of action. So you will be able to look at those at a later stage. Developing using an equine-centric design approach for event planning and management to ensure that equine behavioral, social, physical, including thermal and mental needs are key consideration in choice of location, venues, provision of facilities, and management of an FEI-affiliated event. So we have done some work on that already, and that was the introduction of the key event requirements. Yes, please.
I'll take that one to help Joran a little bit on this. No, so as you may recall, we had the key events requirements approved at the General Assembly in Mexico 2023. There are 14 of them. Many are linked to veterinary/biosecurity measures, and they are fully implemented in the general regulations. And again, we mentioned before that the athletes have a responsibility, officials have a responsibility, but organizers have also a responsibility. And we wanted to ensure that when they want to put an event on the FEI calendar, they need to comply with the various FEI rules and regulations. Now, if they fail to implement all the rules and regulations, we will notice it at FEI headquarters because the FEI officials need to report back to the FEI. Sorry about that. And of course, there might be consequences in case of non-compliance. First, we see it as a collaborative element with the organizer, and it may happen that they couldn't deliver 100% of their obligations, but then they need to explain why. And more importantly, they need to come with their plan as to what measures they're going to take so that the situation doesn't occur the next time. Some events happens once a year, so they have 1 year to fully implement the plan, but some other events, they may have like what we call tours, or they would have several events at the same venue for several weeks or months. Then it would be more challenging, and obviously we don't want every week the same non-compliance to happen. So we also have in the rules the possibility for Sabrina, Secretary General, to take measures. She may remove an event from the FEI calendar in case of non-compliance. She may also decide not to include an application of an event in the calendar because they have failed with their obligations. That's very important. And what is very important as well is that the key event requirements are objective. It's not subjective, they are very objective. So it's easy to measure, it's easy to see whether there was compliance or non-compliance. Now, we need again to work together. If an organizer in one country is not complying, we obviously want the National Federation to be aware. And we also want the National Federation to take their responsibility and potentially, instead of Sabrina not putting an application in the FEI calendar, maybe the National Federation should say, no, you organizer, I'm not going to put your date in the FEI calendar because you have not fulfilled all your requirements that you needed to have in the FEI system. We of course need to work with the organizers. We have an organizers stakeholder groups. They actually, many of them are here at the sports forum. They had the General Assembly yesterday. We need to have the dialogue. They need to come with their feedback as well as to how we can improve the system, how we can help them as well. Maybe there are some of the rules that seems very good on paper, but when you see in practice, it might be challenging to implement. We heard from Quentin before that there might be national legislation that may also apply for some of the venues, that they have some difficulties because there are some local legislation, national legislation. So if that is the case, obviously you need to come back to us so we can try to find a solution. I think the next one is not for me, but I'm going to check. It's not for me. Sabrina.
It's actually for me. Thank you very much. So basically, this very complicated looking slide, really what it means is the following. The vision, which we all agreed would be that we need to give a good life for our horses. And the mission being that we, as FEI, and all of you national federations, we are guardian of the horses. This is what leads us to provide with the different actions that need to be undertaken. These actions are never ending, actually, because we will be producing them. They will be integrated. Stakeholders will get feedback from stakeholders, from the riders, from the national federations. It'll have to be evaluated through reports that come in and whatnot. Further to this, there could be further research that comes in, and then this is ongoing wheel will actually never end because we have to adapt to the way things are and improve as we go along. So it's just to say that it is the vision and the mission that leads through all the actions that we're going to be undertaking, all of us together as a group and as a community. So today, to answer François Mathi's question, we will be publishing the PowerPoint presentation so that all of you can review it in depth. And I really would appreciate if you did review it in depth because we would like to hear from you still after this forum. We are going to create a dedicated email address called welfare@fei.org, where you will be kindly requested to provide your feedback until the 15th of May. Further to that, we have the board meeting. We will continue, as I mentioned earlier, with our interviewing processes with the technical committees and the chairs. We will be reviewing this material and presenting already more information to the board, which is meeting on the 4th and 5th of June. After that, The whole consultation regarding the rules this year will begin on the 26th of June. So there will be certain items, most likely, that will require, that will be sent out to you because it will be part of the rules. And thereafter, we will have a specific session at the General Assembly to present to you a further report on these actions in addition to the communications part, which has not been addressed today. So that is basically the timeline for this. And again, it's not going to end there. We will see how these actions work, improve as we go along, and continue working with you all to ensure that we can provide our horses a good life. So before we move on to the questions, again, I wanted to really express our gratitude to the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission for all the incredible work that they did, which actually we used as a base for our action points today. Were all the recommendations specifically addressed in our presentation today? Not all of them, but they're still being worked out. I believe there are only about 8 which were not briefly mentioned today. Some of those are processes that we still need to incorporate in-house. Others is about monitoring. Communications is one thing that I already addressed. But there will be more information forthcoming to all of you, and we do need you to collaborate and help us on this enormous task, which is everyone and each and everyone's responsibility. So now we're going to open up for questions, and what we're going to try and do is kind of do it on topics. So, and it's going to pretty much be based on the first one who raised their hands. So we are now open to receiving, and I see Peter Collings already has his hand up already here, receiving your comments, and then, like, for example, Peter will bring up a subject, and then we'll tackle anything that's surrounding that subject, and then move on to the next one, okay? So we're as efficient as possible. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sabina. Peter Collings, Chief Veterinarian at Swedish Equestrian Federation, and also a member of LIST Group, and been in this business for late 80s or something. Yeah, a little bit talking about maybe not the elephant in the room, but the horse in the room, regarding the medication issues. We saw the slide and we've seen the 6 key area published by the EWB Commission. For example, used drugs to mask health problems, hide health issues, and horses not being fit to compete. And there are also some recommendations concerning that, and not the least the out-of-competition situation that Göran mentioned. That will be discussed later today. And looking a little bit back, it was a huge success actually to progress from allowing treatment during competition days. Actually, FEI forbid that nowadays, except some medication. And since it's still a lot of positive medication cases, we saw from the slide, the graph from the General Assembly, okay, doping cases is less, but medication, including, nota bene, including fast track, and that's also medications, it's corticosteroids, increase of about 50%. So I think that will be a problem. And besides the EVB, the French Parliament group, the Danish Ministry of Justice, Swedish Board of Agriculture, we actually had to ask for that they are allowing it for 1 year, the FEI regulations. And even US Racing established HISA. All this do not allow medication during, or don't want to see medication during event. And last week there was a webinar by the EF, and even the International Groom Association have as their second ranking, keeping the sports clean, no misuse of drugs, and the German Federation had addressed just their third area focus, medication of horses. So what does this lead to? Well, you could discuss gastric ulcer medication, omeprazole. You could discuss Alternogest because mares are in heat, etc. But the worst thing we think that actually FEI should really do something about is to allowing antibiotics during competition. That's for 3 reasons. the horse is obviously not fit to compete, otherwise it should not need antibiotics. And you have the antimicrobial resistance problem. And besides, many of these antibiotics has actually a pain-killing effect, anti-inflammatory effect, and might be used in that way if it's allowed during competition. So ending up this long issue, since FEI works with the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities, with the International Horse Sport Confederation, and works with WAHO, the World Animal Health Organization, regarding antimicrobial resistance. And just curious to hear, Göran, what is the latest with your work with WAHO regarding antimicrobial? So I think, and we propose that antibiotics should not be allowed during competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. It's a very valid question, especially in regards to the antibiotics. We have discussed this within the veterinary committee, in the list group and so on. And what we currently are doing is asking our laboratories to monitor the presence of a number of antimicrobials, antibiotics, in our regular samples, the EAD CMP samples. And what we can see, in compared to other horse sports, it's extremely low. We have even asked the labs to develop a method for extremely difficult to analyze substance. So we're taking quite long, far-reaching measures to do that. Until we know how big of the problem it is, we're waiting for those results to eventually potentially take steps, and we are working with the World Organization of Animal Health, formerly called OIE, on these matters, and especially addressing awareness. This is critical, and awareness down to grooms level, because they might be managing these antimicrobials and they might even transfer resistance to the horse, and vice versa, of course, and spread it further into society. So this is a very serious matter. We take it seriously, but it's the rules that are applied in racing are in relation to that risk, with also a much higher, more findings than we have, and they stay 1 to 2 days at an event. Our horses may stay a much longer time, but we will continue looking into this for sure, but that's where we are right now. Thank you.
So let's continue with that specific slide, which was basically masking health problems and fit to compete. And I believe we have something online regarding that, Göran.
We do that. For example, I can start with this question. Is from Nicole Albeck. Is FEI aware of the hiding of conflict markers, such as the use of Botox to prevent tail action? Yes, we are. And we're looking into how we can actually learn more about that, on how to control it. We have some ideas on how we can do it. So certainly, I'm not going to go into how we intend to do it, because that would kind of give an opportunity to those that would be stupid enough to try it, to find another way. So they will have a surprise someday. That's for sure. We have a plan.
Are there any other questions regarding masking health problems, fit to compete? No? Okay, so then we can move on to the next question.
I think this one to Sabrina.
Okay, and then we have Eleonora here, if we could have a microphone. Thank you.
So from the International Jumping Riders Club, but has nothing to do with the Riders Club. I just would like to underline the amazing job the Italian Federation did this year, because they had an agreement with the Italian government, and since February this year, a law is in force in Italy that gave to the horse the status of human athletes. So athletes, but is treated like a human. So this means that the horse is protected like a human, and just in case of abuse or not respecting the welfare of the horses, the case go under the criminal law. So it's a really strong situation, and it's a really strong message to all the riders, organizers, and all stakeholders.
Thank you, Eleonora. I think I was really impressed what the Italian Federation achieved in that. And more generally, I would like to address the importance of establishing public-private partnerships, because then, as a federation, you are at the table with the government when they are putting rules in place, when they're putting legislations in place that might affect you. If you work closely with them, you can have really great outcomes. If you allow them instead to kind of set the scene completely, you might be caught off terribly bad having the competition horses in the same legislations as working equidae, such as mules, where there could be huge differences in the environment and everything. So public-private partnerships, work with that. Thank you.
We have another question online, which is actually linked to doping. And the question is, what is the status of the FEI's announced intention to punish countries with high doping levels? Would the FEI not award major events or championships to those countries until they have significantly cleaned up their doping problems? So maybe first point is we do have a session this afternoon, session 3, on equine anti-doping. So probably we can tackle that. But I think here, if I may just briefly answer, we probably need to differentiate the countries that would be involved in doping schemes. And you may remember the doping scandals in other sports with Russia, where it was a state doping scheme where the country was punished and the CAS had confirmed that decision. While if you have individuals having doping problems, do you need to punish either a venue, an organizer, or the country because there are a few cheaters? That was one of the questions. There are some rules that in WADA that you may sanction or you may punish National Federation for that, but that was a question raised 4 years ago at the Sports Forum, and the decision was not to punish National Federation for this kind of scenario. But we can take that more this afternoon during session 3. Any other questions on this, or yes? Microphone is arriving.
Thank you. Jason Broughtigam, British Dressage. Aside from anti-doping, how are you proposing to police the other 23 hours outside of competition? I'm interested in this area in particular because obviously it's very difficult for us to know what goes on behind closed doors. We're very much reliant on whistleblowers. There's always a lack of evidence, which is always a big issue. And are you proposing, in order to enforce sanctions, potentially considering further down the line the idea of licensing participants?
Yeah, thank you for the valid question. I think there are 2 different scenarios. First one is regarding doping. And again, in session 3 this afternoon, we are going to discuss about out-of-competition testing and the challenges, who is responsible, how you go to private stables, to private facilities to do the test. So we are going to park that for now, and we will discuss this afternoon at length. Now, the other part is regarding training method. I think that's what you are probably discussing, and that was one of the important topics that we wanted to discuss. And that's where, for me as a lawyer, the first thing I would struggle is, what do you define, what is permitted and what is not permitted? And I think we do have an abuse of horse provision, which is fine. It's quite broad, and it's including but not limited to, so we can expand it. But I think it would be much clearer and stronger if we defined what is truly permitted as a training methods, that the first thing, so that riders and coaches cannot say, oh, I didn't know that training methods were not, was not appropriate, was not permitted. So that's the first thing. So that's where I know it's challenging, because obviously each discipline will have different training methods. I'm not a rider and I'm not an equestrian person, but I'm pretty sure that there are some methods that have been used for many years and that maybe were accepted many years ago, and they are no longer accepted as well. And I think we need also to factor that in, that nowadays everything is being filmed, everything can end up in social media, anything can be reported. So that's where also we have a bigger responsibility to ensure that this is not happening and that the training methods are ethical, as we mentioned. So that's one part, so to have stronger rules on that, and that's a huge task, and we will need expertise from the coaches, trainers, riders, National Federation, anyone involved. And that's a huge task. Now, when you have these rules, I agree with you then, we need to be aware of incidents. That's the third thing. Luckily now, almost everyone has a phone and everybody is able to film. So we have more and more evidence that are quite straightforward, because when you film something, it's difficult to challenge that is happening. But of course, we need to also have these people being then able to come forward. We often receive allegations of wrongdoings, but then if you want to prosecute a case, you need to have that person acting as a witness. And that person needs to provide a witness statement, needs to provide evidence, and it's not an easy process. If you're a witness in proceedings, and I see many actually law firms represented here, lawyers, they know how it's going to be. You have the direct examination of the witness, but then the opposing lawyer will do what we call cross-examination. They will ask all sorts of questions. They will try to find a loophole. They will try to find a way to say, oh, that witness is not reliable. It's not consistent. It says a month ago this happened, and now you see the stories has changed. So it's not easy. And of course, people are afraid of retaliation. If you are a groom and you want to report an incident that the athlete with whom you are working is doing, you're afraid to be blacklisted. You're afraid not to be seen as the right person, why they do the right thing. And I think we need to back them up, we need to protect them, we need to do it. What is the solution? I'm not sure, because some, they are in a foreign country, they rely on the visa, otherwise they will be expelled from the country, so it's highly complex. You mentioned, how do you ensure that we can enter private properties? That's difficult, that's challenging. That's where we mentioned earlier, do we want to have trainers registration? I think that's what they do in racing, and again, we will tackle a little bit that with a representative from the Irish Racing Authority, where they do license trainers, and then they agree, when you are a licensed trainer, you agree that the governing body has the right to come to your premises. So that's one path we need to look at. Again, Quentin, Simone mentioned the national legislations. We're not going to be the police. In some countries, you need a warrant, you need something in order to enter private properties. So there will be many, many, many hurdles. So we should not be too naive as well, and I think we need to be aware of these challenges. Now, we need to build the system as strong as possible, hopefully globally, but there will be slight differences in the countries. But where the National Federation can play a big role as well, you do have different mechanisms. You do have potentially contracts with your riders, potentially contracts with your trainers, code of conduct things. So you have other tools as well that may allow you, maybe the FEI, we won't be able to enter the premises, but maybe you will be able, because the rider or the trainer, when they sign to be part of a squad or a team at national federation level, they will agree to additional obligations which will allow you to have this. I've talked a lot. I don't know if you want to comment on that, so can we have the microphone? Okay, so let's try to tackle training methods on the other 23 hours. If there are other questions, comments, maybe some national federations can also share their experiences, either good experiences or challenges that they have faced, or any other questions that you may want to bring. Here down, Jessica.
So we have this one, I think this one.
Thank you. I think this is wonderful what the FEI is doing. And for many trainers and riders, I think, and horse owners, horse breeders, it can even appear that it's slightly aggressive, because those people who work with horses in a loving way and in togetherness, this seems irrelevant and too much. But obviously, we've seen in the sport, there's a lot of bad guys in various areas of the sport, either bad guys because they are bad guys, or bad guys because they have no education how to work with horses and how to work with people. So I commend what the FEI have taken out of this Good Life for Horses. At the moment, as a trainer and as a horse owner, we would also like the FEI to support us, those who do it in a common sense manner and do it in a good way. At the moment, many of us feel quite nervous because there is so much filming going on. I mean, for instance, I train at a stables in Switzerland, which is the outdoor arena is just below where people have their little gardens where they go and stay. And we have on a regular basis when we're training that they film us. The people stop with their kids on the road outside and they film. Of course, they're filming because they're intrigued. But it really puts us in a goldfish bowl. And I welcome this very much. But I also just like to ask, what is your position on supporting your members that we are actually doing it in a good way and having our backs free that we can continue to work in a good way with the horses?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. I think that goes back to defining the training methods as well. I think that for me the starting point. Yeah. What do we all agree that this is acceptable? And why? Because also if you are not from the equestrian world, maybe you perceive or you believe that it's not good for the horse, but there may be various reasons to say, no, actually it's not damaging the horse. This is not something that is against the welfare of the horse, but we need to have evidence-based, scientific evidence, that the starting point, and also an agreement within the community for each discipline as to what we believe is acceptable. But for sure we need to support as well the good guys. There are many, we should not also be so negative. There are many, we only talk about the negative there, but there are many great horse owners, great trainers, and we need to be able to support them, that's for sure. But obviously there are also bad guys, and then when there are bad guys, they are damaging to the whole equestrian world, and that's where we need to take actions. Joran, yes?
Thank you. If I may add to what Mika said, it's a really great question, Jessica, and a request. But the starting point, I agree completely. The good thing now is that there's quite a lot of science that also matches the practical experiences. There is a fantastic model for reviewing things from an ethical perspective, produced by Professor Madeleine Campbell, for example, that can be used in also reviewing these various techniques. So we have a number of tools that can be applied to establish what is good, acceptable, and not good, and so on.
But
so
it is
we
about
will do
getting the
that.
communication out right, because I get it. I mean, if we're sitting here and all about sanctions and it's all, it sounds very negative, but I mean, there's so many people doing a wonderful job out there, and they're the unsung heroes, and it probably is the vast silent majority. But the pictures that we've seen are usually regrettably high-profile cases that makes everybody look bad. And we do need to think it's not just about communicating, but also a reward system. Somehow to say, not just at the gala once a year, but more has to be done to support those who are actually doing a phenomenal job. So we take it on board. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Michael Klimke, I have the microphone already. I'm representing the IDRC as a treasurer, and I want to jump on that point because coming back to what Mariette says, what François Matti said, and what Jessica said, we should include much more the riders and the trainers, and especially in dressage. First of all, I must say thank you very much for giving us the opportunity, and I see with all the emotions you bring in with the welfare, with the commission, that's really, really impressive and good for the sport. But what is not good is, from the riders, and especially from the dressage riders' point of view, is that we point out so many things, especially on dressage. We had the topic double bridle. That's not a welfare issue, it's a tech issue. Then the main thing we didn't talk about so far is Rollkur hyperflexion. That's a theme, Mariette, 20 years ago. We were talking about that. We had science 20 years ago that it's not bad. Now you followed up all the social media problems, starting with Lotti Frey in Amsterdam,
Now on the other shows, it was abuse of the horse in the social media, but it has nothing to do with abuse. It was not against welfare. And there we really need more support from the FEI. We need more support from the judges, officials clubs, that we are not left alone as riders and trainers. Because to come back for warming up, if you read the classical training, it is very normal that you stretch a horse long and deep. Why we talk about welfare when a horse comes too deep in the warming up? It's even under veterinarians will explain you that it's very good for the back muscles and for the neck muscles. Why we just look if a horse comes a little bit behind the vertical and suddenly they make pictures and videos and say you abuse your horse? Why if the horse sometimes is can be sometimes a little bit short in the neck, for example, in the test? This has nothing to do with the welfare issue. No. We have many points. I sit next to a judge. We have many points to consider in the test and in the judging. One piece is the neck position, one little piece. But now we get killed as riders and trainers through the social media, have no support when a horse is a little bit too short in the neck for some moments. And therefore, my wish is from the Riders and Trainers Club is, help us. Point out more the classical riding. It's a culture, it's a tradition with a long history. And we must have more good news to really explain it. How many dressage horses went to Olympic Games after a long sport career, retired healthy? We need positive influence, positive news, positive support, and not just say, okay, we have to rule, oh, the stewards must look 5 minutes too deep, then you get a yellow card. Believe me, I'm also long enough in the sport. 99% of the riders are really, really loving their horses and treat them well and train them well. Yeah. And I understand that now with all the public pressure, you have to do something. But please support also the ones that do it good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to comment on that. As mentioned earlier, we had a really good meeting with the dressage stakeholders in Riyadh, riders, trainers, and officials, all together at the same time. There was a consensus that we need to work together, working forward, and that is critical. We mustn't in any way look away from that there are issues and that there are needs for some change, no doubt. But if you also look at the proposals that we are putting forward now, you will see that the way we address the double bridle is one out of many types of tack and equipment that we look specifically into fitting and proper use and working with science. And also what we also said was we're going to reopen that discussion on roll cure, the LDR. And the reason is that, yes, there was research 15, 20 years ago, for sure. There's been more research, but most importantly, a new element has come in, and that's the behavioral science that wasn't there 20 years ago. And we need to add that to the equation. We will work with you, together with all of you, but we also need to work with the scientists and also behavioral scientists on that matter. So I think with doing that and what Mikael just said on defining what is acceptable, not acceptable, all that together will make it possible to also support those good examples, because that's what we really want to do. Thank you.
And then following up on that, I mean, we have a question on...
Together, we'll define it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not just us. We need all of you. And that's clear. And I think, as you mentioned, Joran, I think what you will have noticed today is that we didn't just focus on that specific tack, because we know it's not that. It's more than that. It's simple just to focus on one thing. So that's important. And talking about tack, we have something online, which
we do.
Probably better apt to answer.
So we have a question from, it says Wild Tanya, I think I pronounced that maybe correctly. So she asked, you talk about noseband, double bridle and bits in general. Is there a possibility to allow bitless equipment discussion in the FEI? Well, many disciplines already allow bitless competition with bitless bridles, so that would not be new. And certainly that discussion can go on within the various committees and communities and be raised through the normal regulatory process. So that nothing strange with that. But it would be a mistake to think that you move away from problems just because you use bitless. You move them somewhere else. You need to be aware of that. Again, it's about fitting and proper use. And that also goes for the bitless equipment. Thank you.
So we have Mariette.
Yes, thank you very much. I couldn't agree more with Michael, and I think that it is important that we realize that if dressage should be classical riding, doesn't mean that it's old-fashioned. I think classical is still very modern and up-to-date. And I also would like to say that I agree with Jessica about this filming, and therefore I'm sorry, but a stupid question. What do you do with all these Photoshop pictures and videos which are turning around the dressage world? I mean, you must be an expert to know if it's photoshopped or not. And believe me, there are some awful videos and awful pictures. I'm not saying all, but can you make the difference when you get these videos and pictures?
Yeah, that's a valid point, and actually it's even worse now with AI-generated videos and things that you can do. So you can basically create fake pictures. The only thing I can say, obviously we cannot regulate what is being circulated on social media. The only thing I can say is if the FEI take actions and open disciplinary case, we look at the metadata, we look at the forensic, we ensure that the picture, the video have not been edited so that we are satisfied that we can proceed. We had in the past, we had a picture that had been sent to the FEI with blood, and it was very, very, very red, and the red had been added. So obviously we couldn't act because of that. So, but we do that, and we work with external experts. I'm not an expert in pictures and metadata, but we work with third parties that would do a report and deal with that.
Thank you.
Maybe in question in the front here, and then Rolly. First maybe in the front, and then...
Sorry, I would like to bring something up from behalf of the riders as well. If we talk about equine welfare, we know that the vet check is one of quite dangerous activities at the showgrounds. And I looked at the rules, and you have, of course, quite a lot of criteria for the organizers. But we would really appreciate if at least maybe there will be more criteria mentioned, like distance, maximum distance where the vet check is away from the stables. Or like it does say that it has to secure the safety for the horses and riders, but for example, sometimes we have construction being at the same time happening, or water pipe system for the grass switching on. So our sometimes conditions are quite extreme. So would it be possible to bring up more criteria, for the venue, for the vet check, for the show organizers? That would be really helpful for us. Thank you.
Thanks. That's a valid point, and we'll ensure that we tackle that, and we will look at ways to improving that. Thank you. Yeah. Microphone here in the middle to Rolly.
Thank you very much for all the presentations this morning. Rolly Owers from World Horse Welfare. The FEI has been widely and rightly applauded for establishing the independently chaired Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, and certainly it's become very clear when you look at other industries and sectors that have had their social license challenged, that having that independent oversight is really important. So my question is, outside World Horse Welfare, what plan is there to maintain that external oversight going forward?
Well, So basically, the remit was when they finished their job, the Equine, not finished their job, but when they finished the final report, was for the FEI really to now come up with action plans. And what we hope now is really by allowing our stakeholders to look at this PowerPoint presentation and allowing to have a more general consultation, which is not just FEI, because we have people online, we have people all over the world watching this, and it's not like a general assembly. It is an open consultation that we will receive feedback for people who are not specifically FEI branded, if you want. So we will continue to work and receive the feedback as it comes in. We have not specifically designated that there be a certain group outside the FEI that verifies the actions that are being submitted. These actions will be submitted to the General Assembly.
And also in addition to that, one of the recommendations that we still need to tackle is the monitoring. And we haven't decided yet how we will monitor the implementation of all these action plans. So that's where probably you are leading at as to whether it will be an external person, body, ensuring that the implementation has been complied with. I'm not deciding on that. I'm assuming that the board will discuss and agree as to how we will monitor this, and probably it will depend on the areas, because some are very easy to monitor, whether a rule has been approved by General Assembly, yes, no, that's easy. Some are much more complex to monitor as to how the implementation has been made, but that will be ongoing and for the board to decide based on the action plan that will be submitted to the board on the 4th and 5th of June.
Good. Yeah. Hello. From a veterinary point of view, this is Peter Canning, Chief Veterinarian for the Swedish Equestrian Federation. Klimke mentioned that even veterinarians support the low flexion. I'm not quite sure if you meant that, but there are more recent studies. There are more recent studies than the old Rollcure papers many years ago, showing. I mean, it's not black and white, of course, but even with 15% hyperflexion, you will see with radiographic, with pharyngeal diameter, with pleural pressure was higher, etc. So there are studies showing that horses, even with small hyperflexion, do not feel well or from conflict behavior, but also black and white changes in the throat and the neck. So I think we should have a more complex discussion, not black and white.
That's what Joran said.
That's exactly.
There's more research that has happened. A lot has happened in 15 years. So that is why we have to restart this conversation. George, down here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of this. I'm listening to the audience, and I'm particularly listening to the riders and the trainers and their need to be supported in what they're doing. I was just wondering, I don't want to go back to what we have discussed. I was just wondering that whether after this report we have, it would be worth considering an active and proactive communication policy to educate the general public, to educate the people that are looking at our sport from the outside. I don't know, this is just a thought that came to me. It's part of the consultation and the brainstorming, really. I don't know much about these things, and I was wondering whether that was ever a consideration after the report, and whether that entails risks and how one would come up with such a policy. But I just wanted to see if that would be a possibility.
Thank you, George, for that. I mean, I think if you recall one of the slides that was shown by Ingmar at the end of his presentation when he was referring to this specific session, yes, it is, of course, the FEI governing body of international sport, but it's also the national federations, and it's also the local level. So everyone needs to do their part to make sure that whatever comes out is properly communicated. And of course, we need an in-depth communication plan. And it's, okay, this is all very, structural. It's about sanctions, it's about this and about what now, but then how do we feed the right information out to the entire community. And it can't just be the FEI. It also has to be our 136 national federations and the clubs that are underneath them and whatnot. So we need to work together to come up with the best plan. And that plan we do not have today. And there should be a similar narrative, exactly. There should be, as was briefly mentioned by Joran, or maybe it wasn't, but we talked about it in-house, that we need to provide you national federations with a toolbox.
Yeah.
And part of that toolbox are some of the templates that we talked about today about the statute of no limitations when it comes to abuse of horse, but it also is regarding communications. So I couldn't agree with you more than what I'm doing right now. I agree.
And there is also, for me, the barrier of the language, because not everybody speaks English. And I think we also need to reach out to that part of the community that maybe in Latin America, they will mainly speak Spanish and will not understand English. That's where the National Federation also play a big role as to ensuring that they provide the relevant information to their stakeholder groups as well. And then communication to the wider, to the general public, is the same. Not everyone will speak English, so that's why we need you to speak as well. Maybe François Mati here. Yes, no.
Thank you. Just very short that we speak about communication to the outside world, and I couldn't agree more with Michael. Do we have to treat noseband rollcue, because that was a very important part of what he said, as a welfare issue? It's a tack. If you already, as the FEI, treat it, you need to treat it. But if you address it as a tax issue, a veterinary issue, but not a welfare issue, that gives another signal to the people who don't know our sport. So that's maybe where we should start in the communication to the outside world, being very careful where you place the different items.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'll take the opportunity to congratulate IGRC for their communication, because you've been very good in mentioning to the media that you were coming to the sports forum, that you were going to debate on the topics, and I think that's great that you are doing that, because you're actually spreading the words out there that you are involved, that you are listening to the concern and addressing them. So I think that's great, and please continue to do that. That's really good.
Another question next to
Yeah, next to François.
Thank you very much. Jessica Stark from World Horse Welfare, but speaking as an independent member of the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission. Pleased to say all the independent members have been watching this session very closely. And I must say that we are really happy. We extend our support and offer to the FEI and to national federations and any organizations to assist them in implementing a vision for a good life, as well as with all 30 of the recommendations of the Commission. And thank you so much for the presentations today and the thought you put into it. I mean, it's great to see the vision, and we all love the 5 domains slide that you had up there. That was brilliant, Corin. And then we've heard a lot today about some of the sort of the technical projects and the legal projects that have been ongoing or that you're starting. But from the Commissioner, a question is one piece we feel like we're missing is that sense of welfare. We're talking a bit about veterinary, we're talking about sanctions. Where is the message around welfare and that FEI leadership on welfare and defining a good life for horses? And in particular, what just made us feel in this session is, where's the voice of the horse in FEI policy and decision making, which was one of our recommendations?
Well, that's not easy to. Thank you, first of all. We're really happy that everyone had the opportunity to listen, and we're very grateful for the previous and current and future support of the members. But I think what you just addressed is, so we addressed something quite dry today, to be honest. Yeah. It's very factual, and we started out with that because it was quite a challenge to really decipher all the recommendations, these 62 action points, and boil it down to something that we can work with. And clearly, this is so much more about than the hard facts, than the technical items. It's about ethics, it's about empathy, and those matters that are very nicely addressed in the charter. But we need, of course, to do that as well. But this is a starting point. And I think when we come to the factual work, to the processes that we will be setting up, and also in the communication, I think that will become much more clear then. But right now, we a relatively small group of quite dry people coming up with something that is functional and practical to do. So that's where we're coming from now. But we will continue. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Kjellmyr. I'm from the Norwegian Federation, but I'm also a dressage judge. And I find it interesting the discussion here, especially from the riders and trainers and also from National Federation. I think what has been a big challenge, I mean, we all agree that we have to do something, and I'm impressed by all the work of the Commission. But in the practical life, I think what is missing is the focus on the good examples. Like you just said, maybe we should have a tool to use both for riders, trainers, but also for officials. I think I missed someone to stand up and say how it should be. It's all the criticism about what we're doing, but we haven't managed to get back. Because you do that, you'll be criticized because you're defending it. But I'm not defending bad horsemanship and abuse. But I've been missing some, backup maybe, to make it easier. We have organized meetings for all judges in my country in order to try to help them to give some guidance what they could say, And I also agree that the definition horse welfare is misused quite often. It's easy to take the card, oh, that's horse abuse or that's horse welfare. And it's not always. I mean, we will always have bad riding, but it's not necessarily horse abuse or horse welfare issues. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Points taken. We have an important person here who would like to say something.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say a bit in relation to what Jessica just said, is that, of course, we give the impression here to focus a lot on some practicalities. And this is because I believe we all feel in the FEI headquarters that we need to expand our framework in order to be able to address cases of abuse. Because these are, of course, the cases where we are confronted with in the media and where we need to take action and where we also need to use these cases to show that we have the systems in place. But that does not take away that I agree with Jessica, and as you remember, Jessica, I insisted a lot that on the first part of the report, where basically we need to explain to the population, the non-horsey people that are living in cities and that are very distant from any kind of animal or nature, we need to explain, re-explain, reconfirm this unique bond there is between man and horse. And this is the first part of the report that we didn't tackle today, but which I referred to in my introduction when we are talking about the Olympic campaign, communication campaign that we are developing and for which we need your support, is to explain, first of all, what this unique bond is, how beautiful it is, that we are guardians. There was also a comment from the Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission chair, and I fully agree. We should a bit stop with the two hearts and the kissing and pedaling of horses. We should much more show how we really take care of them in the day-to-day. But this will come. So, and this is maybe a bit not too much highlighted here because we look at more the practicalities, but be ensured that we will come to you with this positive messaging about this unique bond and reconfirm, re-explain to the broader community what it is about and why we can work with horses, why we can sit on horses, why we can train with horses, and why we can compete with horses, because that's what the core business of the FEI is. So, believe me, we will come back to you with that.
So maybe we'll thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll take one last point from Tom, and then, but wait, don't forget, all of you, that we do expect you to provide us with your input after this. This doesn't end here, huh? And then there'll be further information also in the session about anti-doping regulations and stuff, so it will also be helpful to get your input there. But we are requesting that you provide us your information by the 15th of May. So it's not stopping here, and this is the beginning of a long, long adventure. Tom, it's your turn.
Thank you. Least and last, or how you say, last but not least. Tom Gordin from Helsinki, Happy Finland. I wonder how you see your work, because this is a massive work you have done, you've started, and a massive ahead. Do you see it as a process that started, has an end and an end result, or a never-ending, ongoing process for decades to really to place our lovely sport accepted, respected, and even admired within the frame of social license? Thank you.
Thank you, and I think you said it beautifully. It's never ending. This is, we started this process a long time ago, actually, but now we were really focusing on it more, and it will always evolve because society also evolves. But at the same time, we need to be better at what we're all doing, and a lot of that is all about communication as well. So, but that's not to say that there is not room for improvement. Of course there is. So yes, this will continue. This is just the very beginning of a very, very long chapter. But I believe we're going to be successful because I think we have the best sport in the world. And we all love what we do. We all love our horses. And so yes, to be continued. So ladies and gentlemen, a huge, huge thank you for your incredible input today. As I mentioned, PowerPoint will be published. We expect your input. We will continue this dialogue with each and every one of you. And we will ensure that we do provide and we can demonstrate to the world outside that we are providing a good life for horses. So we're going to break now for lunch, and we'll be back at 1:45. Okay, 1 hour time for lunch. It's just outside. Thank you very much.